The last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back to Liverpool, everybody. Patrick Christys here, live at Labour Party conference. And within the last half an hour, we have heard Keir Starmer's keynote speech at this Labour Party conference. Let's get some reaction now from the one and only Emily Thornberry, MP for Islington South and Finsbury, and indeed Shadow Attorney General for England and Wales. Emily, thank you very much. We've not previously had the pleasure. Right, some standouts there. A lot of people wondering, though, when it comes to things like nationalising, Great British Energy, for example, 100 billion big ones for a price freeze for energy, etc. Where's all this money coming from?
So what we do is we have our own rules, which is that it is all right to borrow to invest. And whilst we have Tories who want to kind of borrow in order to give money to the very richest, we want to actually borrow to invest, and by doing that, one of the things which is really fueling inflation, everybody knows this, is the price of gas, is the price of energy. So what we want to do is we want to give, as Keir said, we want to have British power to the British people. We want to start using the energy sources that we've really got, and we're not really exploiting well enough yet. We've got some of the biggest tides in the whole of the world. We ought to have tidal power here. We ought to be spending money on wave power. We ought to be spending much more on wind power and solar. We could actually be a superpower when it comes to green energy. We really could, and why not?
Green has been a big thing here.
Yeah, absolutely.
A big element.
It's because it's about 1 million jobs as well. It's not just about bringing down the energy bills. It's about creating jobs for the future. It's a really exciting program, and it's an exciting program given by somebody who's actually got a bit of vision.
Well, a bit of vision, I suppose. Yes, it depends what vision that is. But he did also mention things which must not sit too well with you. Controlled immigration, a points-based system. If the Tories have been saying that, you'd be up in arms. He's not going to reverse Brexit. I don't know where you stood on Scotland before previously, but he's definitely not going to let it go without a fight. How do you feel about all of that in the round?
I think what we saw was the speech of a guy who has really stepped up. I think that his confidence has grown. I think that it was quite clear that he was speaking, it's the Keir I know, actually speaking and not being afraid to be himself and to show how his politics come from him. And I think it was a speech of a future Prime Minister. I really do. I'm so excited by it. I think that it was a really good speech.
Are you actually secretly, we've only got about 30 seconds, really glad that he's not up against Boris, because Boris, for all his flaws, as they say, was bombastic, right? And he did have a personality, and that maybe highlighted some of Keir Starmer's shortcomings. Now he's up against Truss.
I think what people want is they want a serious man for serious times, and I think that's what Keir is. He's a man full of ideas and full of confidence and hope.
OK, thank you very much. Emily Thornberry, great to finally meet you, I must say. Oh, and you are, quickly, you're DJing tonight, aren't you?
I'm DJing tonight, 12 o'clock, Labour students.
You're taking to the day. What's your DJ name?
It's just me.
It's just me. OK, it'll never catch on. It'll never catch on. All right, Emily, thank you very much. Well, as you can tell, I am live now from this Labour Party conference in Liverpool all the way through until 6 o'clock. Just Get myself loosened up for Thornbury's DJ decks, but there we are. Coming up. The pound has settled down after turmoil in the market, but financial woes do continue. Some analysts are predicting interest rates could reach 6% next year. Some mortgage providers have temporarily withdrawn their entire mortgage product range. How does this affect you? I will be asking a mortgage broker what that means for you. But first, it's time for your latest headlines. Don't go anywhere.
Thanks, Patrick. It's 3:32. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Labour leader has promised he will create a publicly owned green energy company within a year if he's elected. Sir Keir Starmer said his plans for a great British energy would provide British power to the British people. His keynote speech at his party's conference came after days of financial market uncertainty in the wake of the Chancellor's mini-budget. Speaking in Liverpool in the last hour, Sir Keir also took aim at the government and said, "Don't forget, don't forgive," as he accused the Conservatives of losing control of the economy.
Government has lost control of the British economy. And for what? They've crashed the pound. And for what? My government will be different. We will run towards the challenges of tomorrow. We will get us out of this endless cycle of crisis. And we will do it with a fresh start, a new set of priorities and a new way of governing.
The Chancellor's told City investors he's confident in the government's long-term plan for growth after the pound hit that record low against the dollar yesterday. Kwasi Kwarteng reiterated the government's commitment to fiscal sustainability in a meeting with pension funds, insurers and asset managers. Next month, he'll set out a package of regulatory reforms for the UK's financial services sector to drive growth, he says, and try to incentivise investment. Eurostar says the impact of the pandemic and Brexit means it's currently not possible to reopen closed stations. Writing to the Transport Committee, the operator's CEO said additional border checks for UK citizens post-Brexit have led to a significant increase in processing times at stations. The now necessary stamping of British passports by Continental Police adds at least 15 seconds to border control processing times. Next year's Eurovision Song Contest will be held in either Glasgow or Liverpool. The BBC said the two remaining cities, which both have Riverside Arena venues, had the strongest overall offer. The broadcaster says a final decision will be made within weeks. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back shortly to Liverpool and Patrick.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio,
and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Right, welcome back, everybody. Everybody keeps complaining about being skimp, but what about people trying to get on the property ladder? Because the pound has settled down now after turmoil in the markets, but these financial woes do indeed continue. Some analysts are predicting that interest rates could reach 6% next year. Some mortgage providers have actually temporarily withdrawn their entire mortgage product range. Or the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, squarely blamed Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng's, or as he says anyway, reckless and irresponsible choices for the actions of lenders. But the uncertainty around the future of interest rate rises has forced many lenders to make the decision to reduce their offerings, as there have been a big change in the cost of funding. We need to unpack and unpick all of this. What does it mean for people like first-time buyers, people looking to sell, the rental market as well? Goodness gracious me, that's gone through the roof. Joining me to unpick all of this is Nick Mendez, who's a mortgage technical manager at the mortgage brokers John Charcoal, I believe. Thank you very, very much. Right, okay, so is it bad time, very bad time for people looking to get on the property ladder, basically?
No, well, it's going to be a very uncertain time. I think that's going to be the biggest thing, especially if you're joining the process early on and you're worried about your mortgage, if it's going to be there at the point of application or even during. But the main thing is, for a lot of clients, is that they want a secure rate as quickly as possible. One, before it increases, but also two, before the lender decides to pull out of the market. Longer term, what we probably will see is the property market will probably take a dip. But that said, nothing's for certain. So I think for a lot of clients that are at the beginning of their journey, it's going to be a worrying time for them in terms of not knowing what their monthly payments will be moving forward.
Yeah, but how quickly do you reckon this is all going to settle down? Is this just jitters with the market? Kwasi Kwarteng did something a little bit bold and unexpected, and is this just a natural reaction to that?
It's hard to say. Given the mini budget that we had on the Friday and where swaps were on the Monday, there was a 1% increase, which for most lenders was just unsustainable to carry on offering their current product range. So often what you will find is with any sort of movement is that lenders typically got a few different options. The first is just to pull out the market completely. Two is to reprice at a very extremely high price or just dip out the market temporarily and come back in. With all of these uncertainties, what lenders are really worried about is the service levels and being hung out to dry. So where you've got certain lenders that have, for example, HSBC in the last few moments have said that they're actually going to pull their rates and come back out tomorrow. What this looks like, we don't know. But with anything that's going to happen, the biggest concern will be what happens with the MPC meetings between now and what's expected to happen going into next year. 6% base rate rise in terms of where base rate could be, and the impact that could have on monthly repayments is simply unaffordable for most households.
Nick, we are the People's Channel, so we want to give the people at home some advice right now, because not everybody's a mortgage expert, an economic expert. I'm certainly not, and I want to hear from you. If I'm watching this right now and I'm looking to make some moves in the property market, give me your top tips.
Well, if you're thinking about getting on the property market, I'll be looking at saying review your circumstances. If you're hedging that the property market's going to take a bit of a dip, it might be worthwhile waiting, because it just means that your deposit could stretch slightly more. But with that, if you're currently in the process, I'll be saying get your documents together, make sure your broker's got a plan A as well as a plan B in case there's any changes. Outside of that, if you're coming to the end of your deal when it's coming to remortgaging, especially in the last 6 months of a fixed rate deal, that's when you can put a new deal in place with a new lender. Also doing a product transfer with the existing lender. So the main thing is, if you're putting a new deal 6 months in advance, and if rates go up, at least you've secured your deal now. If rates go down, at least you've got the option of either staying where you are on a product transfer or switching onto a new deal with the deal that you've secured yourself.
Great stuff, Nick. Thank you very much. Nick Mendez there, mortgage technical manager at John Charcoal Mortgage Brokers. So we've kind of hit your top two stories so far today on GB News Live. Labour Party conference, Keir Starmer's just finished over there in that room. We got all the reaction to that. I'll be whizzing you through it as well. He hit on the cost of living crisis. He hit on a big green agenda. He hit on the economic divide now between the Conservatives and the Labour Party, slamming the Tories, as he said, basically for crippling the country. He talks about controlled immigration. We're going to be returning to that very, very shortly, actually, because what on earth is going on when it comes to Albania. Liz Truss apparently had struck some kind of deal with the Albanians to send people coming back if they'd got here illegally on boats in the Channel. That now appears to be, for want of a better phrase, dead in the water, because all they have to do when they get here is say that they are seeking asylum, and bang goes the deal, which means, let's be honest, we're not going to be sending anyone to Albania anytime soon. He's not going to reverse Brexit, Keir Starmer, and there's going to be no Indy Ref 2. But did you think we could escape some royal news here? Well, joke's on you. No, we couldn't. We've got Union flags everywhere. There was a national anthem sung in that room just over there not so long ago, but GB News now understands that not only has the new royal cipher just dropped, no, there are no plans for an investiture ceremony for the new Prince of Wales. Earlier this month, First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, appeared to strongly suggest a copy of the grand ceremony that saw Charles and made Prince of Wales in 1969 would be, quote, inappropriate, the cost of living crisis. Hey, let's cross back to the studio now. GB News' very own royal reporter, Cameron Walker, joins us right now. Cameron, thank you very much. You always look very regal yourself. What's going on? We've got a new royal cipher, but no ceremonies for Charles.
William as the new Prince of Wales. If you remember, or you've seen pictures back in 1969 of that famous, almost coronation-like investiture of the then Prince Charles as the Prince of Wales, done by Her Majesty the Queen when he was put a coronet on his head, which looks a bit like a crown, essentially. None of that is, at the moment, going to be happening because Kensington Palace, it was understood that there are no plans for an investiture ceremony. As you mentioned, Patrick, Mark Drakeford said a copy of this famous investiture ceremony with Charles, as you're seeing on your screen now, would be inappropriate, particularly perhaps with the cost of living crisis, and I suspect that officials at Kensington Palace and Prince William himself are very much aware of that and how that would go down with the public, especially if their taxpayers' money is involved with that. But the Prince and Princess of Wales have a true kind of love for Wales, and they are in the country today. They've been in Anglesey a little bit earlier on this afternoon, visiting an RNLI lifeboat station. You can see them greeting crowds there on your screens. They were visiting local businesses and meeting local people as well. It's the first place they spent time as newlyweds. They had their first marital home there. Their oldest son, Prince George, spent the first years of his life in Anglesey, where these pictures are being taken. And they also chose to take Prince George and Princess Charlotte to Wales to visit during Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations back in June. So a special time for them. They've also been in Swansea in the last hour or so visiting a church which has many different functions. It's got a food bank, it's got a Swansea Baby Basics, which distributes kind of essential items for vulnerable families. We know that the Princess of Wales is very keen on early childhood development. This little boy you're seeing on your screen now is 4-year-old Theo Crompton. He's wearing his school tie and uniform, and he was rewarded with the chance to present a bouquet of pink roses to Kate. And his mum said, "We were actually on our way to school when I changed my mind and decided to bring him down here for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I suspect, Patrick, that this little boy, this is something that he's not going to forget in a hurry, meeting the new Prince and Princess of Wales.
Yeah. Absolutely. Cameron Walker, thank you very much, back at GB News Towers in London, bringing you up to date. For people who've been hoping that by now I would have had the opportunity to memorise the fact that Prince Charles is now King Charles and that the Prince of Wales is William, you'd be wrong about that, I'm afraid, because I cannot seem to get that into my head. Also, interesting because that child technically, I think, there was playing truant from school, but we'll have to leave it. Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts about Keir Starmer's speech to the Labour Party conference. Richard says, "It was a clever speech, well delivered. The characterisation of Tory goals was not honest. There was little on real policy." Well, there was little on real policy, but just to bring you up to speed on a couple of the things that were policy, really, I suppose. Great British Energy, you're going to nationalise all of that. Who's paying for it? £100 billion going to be set aside for a big energy price freeze, and no tax cuts for those top earners. Going to use that to try to help pump more money into NHS staff. Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor, will be with us shortly to pick that apart, because I'm not sure the numbers add up there, but Gareth has been on, who said comedy is dead in the UK. I've just listened to Starmer's speech. Gareth, not a fan. I can tell by that. Brian's been on. Same old Robin Hood left wing. We are for the people, socialist ideology. Exactly who are the working people? Can I just say, yesterday, people may have noticed that I had at some point a gelato live on air. Get yourself over here because Ice Cream Lady's back. It is Labour conference. People say that it's all full of freebies from the left wing. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to get myself one. Lovely to see you again. And yes, there we go. Fantastic. I do actually quite enjoy all the freebies here. Most of the problems in this country are due to external forces, not the government. That's another email. gbviews@gbnews.uk is that email address. But I believe that we're going to be joined now by a Conservative MP, which is a nice change, frankly, from all of the Labour MPs that we've been having on relentlessly here. Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng has told city bosses that he's confident that the government's long-term economic plan will deliver the growth promise. Kwarteng has stood by his measures despite the bad reaction of the markets and Friday's fiscal announcements. But, of course, throughout the Labour Party conference, Sir Keir Starmer has argued that Labour is now the party of sound money, with the government's medium-term fiscal plan expected on the 23rd of November. Long time now for Kwasi's just sit and fester. Is Trussonomics still the way to go? Greg Smith joins me now. Thank you very much. He is the MP for Buckingham. Greg, well, look, Keir Starmer's drawn a big line in the sand. He says now that Labour are responsible with our money and the Tories are not.
There's a reality at play, Patrick, and it's a simple one, that if we'd have carried on as is, the Bank of England was really clear that we would be heading for a really bad recession by Christmas. And the Chancellor and the Prime Minister were absolutely right to put in place big supply-side reforms to our economy to get it growing, to get growth up to 2.5%. Because if we don't do that, then people's standards of living will definitely fall. We won't have the secure jobs, the high-paid jobs into the future that people need. And so by cutting tax and putting in place those supply-side reforms, like keeping the investment allowance at £1 million rather than dropping it to a couple of £100,000, businesses will have the confidence to invest, to grow, to employ more people, to put up wages and to give people the security they need going forward. And whilst Labour, I'm sure, are enjoying the rhetoric this week, there are realities when we look back to the past. No Labour government has ever left office with unemployment higher than when they started.
Indeed, and I can't help but wonder if this Keir Starmer bubble is about to burst. We've got Tory conference next week. It'll be really fascinating to see how you guys respond to some of that rhetoric that's come here. He's drawing up a big economic divide between yourselves and the Labour Party, saying there won't be any of these tax cuts for the top earners, trying to create really a rich versus poor mentality. But the fact is, though, do you now think that Labour and maybe some people in this country, as a result of Labour's rhetoric, lack the confidence that Britain can actually go for growth? Do they need the state to control everything?
Well, that is the fundamental dividing line between left and right in British politics. The Labour Party, they love taxing everyone to the hilt, and they can't even decide what their response to the Chancellor's announcements were. You've got some Labour MPs saying they'll definitely reverse the 19p basic rate of income tax and keep it at 20%, and you've got others that are saying it's quite a good idea. The truth is that no matter how well scripted those speeches on the Labour conference stage are, we've got no idea what the Labour Party stands for, no idea what they would actually do with taxation. All we have is their past record. Let's have a look at what happened in 2008, and let's have a look at what normally happens to unemployment when Labour are in office.
OK, all right, Greg, thank you very, very much. It's great to have you on the show. And indeed, as you made some good points there, one of the major questions that we've been discussing and will continue to discuss here is where is some of this money coming from, whether it's nationalising British energy, or a little bit of it anyway, or this £100 billion price freeze as well. Where's the money coming from for more nurses and medical staff? Could it be same old, same old? We don't know how it's funded. Greg Smith there, thank you very much, Tory MP for Buckingham. Right, now, there is a bit of news, I believe, relating to Rupa Huq. I'm going to bring you shortly when I get the nod that I can actually say it. But Whitehall lawyers have said that the government's rapid returns deal with Albania to deport Channel migrants will not apply to those seeking asylum. Get this through your heads, people, OK? So the government did do a deal with Albania to, fingers crossed as they saw it, send some of these people coming here over the Channel back to Albania. Well, now it will not apply to those who they say are seeking asylum. Shock horror, every single person who lands on our beaches is going to say, I'm seeking asylum. Refugee charity Care for Calais requested disclosure for the deal, and the government's legal department responded by saying asylum seekers, quotes, will not be subject to the arrangements. The charity is framing this as a U-turn on previous government policy, but the Home Office informed us that the majority of Albanians crossing the Channel are apparently no longer seeking asylum when they get here. Well, I bet they will now when they listen to this, won't they? So, is the government's border policy working? Or is this yet more evidence that it isn't? Here to discuss this with me now is online editor of The Critic magazine, Sebastian Milbank. Thank you very, very much. I'm not being funny, but this deal to me doesn't sound like it's worth the paper it's written on. Yet again, we end up in a situation where people can just come over the Channel willy-nilly.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's no one sort of deal or fix is going to solve a problem that in this country, excessive levels of migration that the government has the legislative tools to solve. That they have a majority in Parliament. If they want to pass a law that gives them what they need to deport or reject asylum applications, they can. And I think we've let the government off the hook, and I think we've focused far too much, even just on the question of asylum. So that, over 1 million people entered the country last year on visas granted by the government. Most of those people were not asylum seekers. They were students, they were people who came here to work. And while those aspirations individually are perfectly admirable, the overall effect of 1 million people are entering the country is huge pressure on the housing market. It's a downward pressure on wages. And I don't think that this is a responsible attitude to a country where people can't afford to buy a home and they haven't seen a wage increase and they're seeing their cost of living going.
Yeah, Sebastian, let me just interject there because you've hit a very, very good point, which is that when Liz Truss was discussing about the fact that she might want to, in order to go for growth, strike things like visa deals for essentially free movement with countries like India and subcontinent and all those places. At the same time, people were thinking, well, maybe, just maybe, that's palatable if we saw illegal immigration as well. But hang on a minute, it looks as though she wants to do neither. And here I am, and I cannot believe this, sitting at Liverpool at a Labour Party conference with a Labour Party leader who's just said to me there that he wants controlled immigration and a points-based system. I mean, good grief, Labour has said that they were on top of the economy. Don't tell me they're on top of immigration now as well.
I mean, one would believe it when you see it in power, but nevertheless, after successive Tory manifestos where have been promised low immigration, the words tens of thousands have been bandied around a lot, and it's not. Obviously, governments always fall short of targets, but you have to look at the numbers going up and have to say there hasn't even been an attempt to make this happen. And you can say that Home Secretaries have made efforts, but realistically, these are things that have to happen in our economic policy. It has to happen in the Treasury. It has to happen in the Department of Business. In none of these, there's no joined up approach. And I think there are very few governments that are willing to sacrifice GDP growth if they think that migration might help that. And the problem is, of course, migration will help GDP growth. If you add 1 million more people to the country, the economy will be larger. It's just that the per capita level of income will not necessarily go up at all. Productivity will not necessarily go up. But they can point to a line on a graph and they can keep paying the bills and claim that they've done their job. But it's
Look, Sebastian, I can't help but... Yeah, I can't help but fear, Sebastian, that the people in this country now who frankly care about the number of both legal and illegal immigration that we're seeing, people who've been called Little Englanders, people who've been called racist, people who've been marginalised for such a long period of time, actually I would argue that the vast majority of those people simply care about having enough housing stock, access to public services, potentially perhaps as well national culture, demographics, dare I say it. Now those people are just going to have to suck it up because as far as I can tell, there is not a major political party in this country that really overtly cares about controlling immigration. Do the British public now just have to accept the fact that, frankly, immigration is going to run rampant both legally and illegally in Britain for the foreseeable future?
Well, that's certainly what we've been served up. I don't think people have to accept it. I mean, the real problem is that people won't accept it. And I think that the British political system, it's very robust. It's very resilient. But firstly, that's partly how we've gone into trouble. That, I think we've become quite naive. And that if you look at the rise of populism worldwide, you're seeing a situation in which populations over and over again have rebelled. And we saw this during Brexit, that you're unleashing a huge amount of political instability if you don't listen to what people are telling you, and if you don't give people certainty about the future. And I don't think you've mentioned racism. I don't think it is remotely a question of race. I think people of all backgrounds in this country suffer when they feel they don't have a control of their borders. And I don't think it matters where you're born or how you came to this country. If you're facing a competition with the global labour market, if you're facing competition with global capital market, that's not what people have signed up for who have come to this country legally.
No, it's not. And Sebastian, thank you very much. I'm going to have to let you go. I could talk to you all day. Online editor of the Critic magazine, Sebastian Milbank. And can I just say, I've even spoken to very few people here at Labour Party conference who are members of various different ethnic minority communities who came here legally, whose parents came here legally. And they say to me pretty much the same thing, which is that actually they do think that there should be restrictions, there should be laws, and people shouldn't be able to circumnavigate them. I tell you what, though, let me know at home, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Get in touch with those emails. Keep those emails coming in, because this immigration Albania topic is one we're returning to throughout the show. Is the very best thing that we can do in this country when it comes to striking a deal to try to stop what's happening in the Channel is actually to sign a deal with Albania that means if someone sets foot on our shores and they say that they're an asylum seeker, even if they're not, then we can't do anything about it. Is that really the best we've got? There is a statement here quickly from the Home Office that says, since signing our returns agreement with Albania in 2021, we have removed more than 1,000 Albanians, including some who crossed the Channel illegally to come to the UK. Those who seek to abuse our system should be in no doubt of our determination to remove them, as the public rightly expects. But is that just word salad, ladies and gentlemen? You're with me, Patrick Christys, here for GB News Live, very much live at the Labour Party conference. Important stuff this, I teased it, I'm going to say it now. In the last few minutes, the Labour MP Rupa Huq has been suspended by the party after comments that she made at a fringe meeting today about Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, which have been criticised as racist, potentially because, in my opinion at least, they actually are. I'll be getting stuck into the detail of all of that with our political editor Darren McCaffrey in just a few minutes. I will be back in a tick.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio, and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Right, welcome back everybody. Patrick Christys here, live at Labour Party conference in Liverpool. And yes, we have got a little bit of news coming your way. The breaking news, in fact, is that Rupa Huq, Labour MP, has been administratively suspended from the Labour Party after she described Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng as superficially black. Interesting stuff this. I'm going to be posing the question, shock horror, does Labour actually have a racism problem? We'll have more from our political editor Darren McCaffrey, who's joining me next, and we're also going to bring you more reaction to that keynote speech made by Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer as he addressed party members here in Liverpool. He set out his stall, he set out his vision for the party, perhaps a little bit light on detail, but actually fascinating that I think he hit a lot of key points, and let's be honest, he's really positioning himself and his party as being the ones who are sensible with your money. In the middle of a cost of living crisis, is that the smart thing to do? He channeled leaders of the past, specifically Tony Blair, apart from, I mean, it was Poundland Tony Blair, but it was Tony Blair in a way, as he claimed the Labour Party was the party of the centre ground. I'll compare the leaders with former Director of Political Operations for Tony Blair to get the lowdown on whether or not Keir's actually anything like him, or just a much duller version, and ask who the party would prefer in this current political climate. Starmer or Blair have been out and about asking people. The results might shock you. But despite only being weeks into the job, Liz Truss's government has already apparently lost control of our economy. That's what some people are saying. At a meeting with city investors this morning, the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, who is, I can confirm, not just superficially black, said that he believed the approach of the government will work and promised close cooperation with the Bank of England. It comes a day after the pound plunged to historic lows in response to the Chancellor's tax-cutting mini-budget. Are we right to trust the Tories' new economic approach? How long will we have to wait to see results? And another blow for the government and their border policies in the UK to stop illegal migration. When will it end? Their so-called rapid returns deal with Albania should frankly just be called stay as long as you want, because they're not going to be able to deport channel migrants arriving across the channel if they are, quote, seeking asylum. They could be exempt from this deal, not even worth the paper it's written on. But before that, it's time for your latest news headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon to you. The Labour leader, as you've been hearing, has promised he'll create a publicly owned green energy company within a year if he's elected. Sir Keir Starmer said his plans for Great British Energy, as it would be called, would provide British power to the British people. His keynote speech at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool came after days of financial market uncertainty in the wake of the Chancellor's mini-budget. Well, speaking at conference in the last hour, Sir Keir Starmer also took aim at the government and said, "Don't forget, don't forgive," as he accused the Conservatives of losing control of the economy.
Government has lost control of the British economy. And for what? They've crashed the pound. And for what? My government will be different. We will run towards the challenges of tomorrow. We will get us out of this endless cycle of crisis. And we will do it with a fresh start, a new set of priorities, and a new way of governing.
Well, the Chancellor has told city investors he's confident in the government's long-term plan for growth after the pound hit a record low against the dollar. Kwasi Kwarteng reiterated the government's commitment to fiscal sustainability in a meeting with pension funds, insurers and asset managers. Next month, he'll set out a package of regulatory reforms for the UK's financial services sector to drive growth and incentivise investment. Ofgem has issued a warning to most of the UK's gas and electricity suppliers that they need to provide more support to households who may be struggling to pay their bills. The energy regulator says all providers need to fulfil their obligations in helping customers who have difficulty paying. Following a market review, it found process failures in companies, bar British Gas, giving help to those who need payment plans. Workers at the UK's largest container port have begun fresh strikes today in a dispute over pay. Around 1,900 members of the Unite Union at Felixstowe Port have walked out following an 8-day stoppage last month. The strike is planned to continue until next Wednesday. Felixstowe representatives say they've exhausted all measures trying to reach a deal with workers.
This strike is about pay. We've offered and we are implementing a pay deal of 7% plus £500. That dates from the 1st of January when CPI inflation was 5.4%, and there'll be another pay award due on the 1st of January, so in a little over 3 months' time.
The UK's counter-terrorism police is warning the threat from terrorism remains very real, with officers intercepting 32 attacks over the last 5 years. The Deputy Assistant Commissioner told the International Security Expo in London threats are mainly from self-initiated terrorists who are very difficult to detect. He said, "We all need to remain vigilant." Authorities are currently running 800 counter-terrorism investigations, while the official terrorism threat level is substantial, meaning an attack is likely. Internationally, the Kremlin says it can't rule out sabotage as the cause of damage to its Nord Stream gas pipeline. 3 offshore lines running under the Baltic Sea developed unexplained leaks yesterday. An investigation has now been launched into the cause. Officials say it's impossible to estimate when the gas network will be restored. Japan has held a state funeral for the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. That's the first such event in the country for 55 years. Abe's ashes were carried in a military procession through central Tokyo to a 19-gun salute. And thousands of spectators queued to lay flowers and bowed to a picture of the former premier. The ceremony was not without controversy, however. Nationwide, protests were taking place, arguing that the event was too expensive, being held at a time of economic struggles in the country. Eurostar says the impact of the pandemic and Brexit means it's currently not possible to reopen closed stations. Writing to the Transport Committee, the operator's CEO said additional border checks for UK citizens have led to significant increases in processing times at stations. The now necessary stamping of British passports by Continental Police adds at least 15 seconds to border control processing times per person. Next year's Eurovision Song Contest will be held in either Glasgow or Liverpool. The BBC said the 2 remaining cities, which both have Riverside Arena venues, had the strongest overall offer. The broadcaster says a final decision will be made within weeks. That's it. You're up to date on GB News. The People's Channel will bring you more news as it happens. Now back to Patrick.
Welcome back to GB News Live. We are the People's Channel, and rightly so, we'll be talking about what the heck is going on in the channel a little bit later on. But we are here at Labour Party conference right now in Liverpool, covering the latest as leader Keir Starmer just delivered his keynote speech. But the speech is being somewhat overshadowed now, actually overtaken by events, as MP Rupa Huq has now been administratively suspended from the Labour Party after she described Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng as, get this, superficially black. Good grief. Joining me now is GB News' political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Darren, just give us the latest, and it might be worth reading out this quote as well, I think.
Yeah, so on these fringe events at party conferences, essentially where MPs and delegates and members go and they talk about various different issues. But Rupa Huq was essentially caught on audio tape at one of these fringe meetings talking about the Chancellor and the government, at which she said, I am going to read you the quote, which she said that Kwasi Kwarteng, when she was talking about the new Chancellor, that he is a black man. He went to Eton, I think he went to a very expensive prep school, all the way through the top schools in the country. If you hear him on the Today programme, you wouldn't know he is black. Now, unsurprisingly, that has caused a lot of outrage, not least among senior Conservatives, including people like Sajid Javid and others, calling the comments vile, saying that she needs to apologise. In fact, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Leader, was interviewed just a couple of minutes ago saying that she needed to apologise. However, Labour have clearly taken quite decisive action on all of this. They've already suspended her from the party, pending an investigation, and it's been condemned. In fact, my colleague has just been at a press briefing where the party is outrightly and full-heartedly condemning the comments. But you're right, this is the last thing the Labour Party wanted. You know, frankly, they got through this week presenting a really united image after what's been a pretty turbulent years for the party, and now they're having to deal with this issue on the day Keir Starmer's made a speech. Not great for them. And we'll have to see. I'm not entirely sure what they're going to have to investigate, given the fact that Rupa Huq was caught saying this on tape.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens.
Yes, indeed. And like you said, the last thing that Labour needed at the moment, isn't it, really? And it's fascinating, these fringe events. So quite often MPs must assume that they're not going to be recorded at these things. And so that could be a concern for people, because if she felt as though, well, no one's really going to hear me say this apart from who's in this room, that's kind of what closet racism is about. But at these fringe events, people, just kind of open up, do they? How does it work?
Well, I think in many regards, I mean, you have to remember, obviously Angela Rayner got herself into a bit of trouble last year at exactly Labour Party conference, at a fringe event in which she talked about the Conservative Party. And do people, I think was today, you normally in quite a small room, though often with quite a few people there. Huq has to say about this. We have not had a response from her, so we're going to have to wait and see what she says. But what I would say is that often people do talk for a long period of time. You know, these things can go on for an hour and a half, and people may well say things that, I don't know, they didn't necessarily mean or whatever, simply because they are talking so much. But clearly, you know, this was a thought process. When you read what she actually has to say, you know, she talks about it at the start of that quote, doesn't she, when she calls him superficially, he's a black man, and then at the end, essentially is again suggesting you wouldn't know he was black. So we're going to have to wait to see what she says, but, you know, these remarks clearly roundly condemned, not just outside, but even within the Labour.
Yeah, absolutely. Darren McCaffrey, thank you very, very much. Darren McCaffrey, our political editor. I think it raises several very serious questions, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't it? And this is going to be impacted upon throughout the course maybe of this show as well. But tomorrow, I think, as the dust settles, as Darren rightly said, we've got to wait and hear what Rupa has to say. But we know what she's already said, and that is a massive concern for people. Some tweets flying around already. What's a black person supposed to sound like, being one of them? And also, is it Labour again saying that maybe he's not the right kind of ethnic minority for them? All these questions, it's reared its head again. Questions as well of whether or not Labour does have a race problem. But it is important to say that perhaps in the past, when it came to things like anti-Semitism, it was left to fester a little bit. There were these quite long investigations into whether or not someone should be suspended. Huge question marks over it, and that fueled speculation and it fueled controversy. Labour here have reacted pretty swiftly, and if you are just joining us, that is the fact that Labour MP Rupa Huq has been administratively, which is a very difficult word to say, suspended from the Labour Party following remarks that she called Kwasi Kwarteng superficially black. So there we go, that's the latest. We'll be unpicking all of that a bit later on and throughout the show as well. But get your emails coming in on that, gbviews@gbnews.uk. The last thing that Sir Keir Starmer needed here at what has really been broadly a very positive conference for the Labour leader. He delivered a keynote speech at this particular conference, pledging that Labour will deliver a fresh start for the UK with promises to invest in the NHS, green energy and provide for working class people. So to assess the Labour leader's speech, I am joined now by Will Tanner, who's former Deputy Head of Policy at Number 10. Will, great to have you on the show. I was speaking a bit earlier on about two people in the queue about what they actually wanted from Keir Starmer, and they said they wanted something green, they wanted potentially nationalisation of various different things as well, they wanted to boost the NHS, and they wanted him to sort out the cost of living crisis. Has he ticked all those boxes?
Well, I think what you saw from Keir Starmer today was a very assured, confident performance, and a speech that was very specifically tailored, not actually to the concerns of Labour members and the attendees at the conference, but I think to the centre ground of British voters. As you say, he focused on the NHS, he focused on bringing jobs and growth specifically through green industry, and he focused on the cost of living with a kind of patriotic believe in Britain wraparound that will be directly targeted at those swing voters that left the Labour Party at the last election and that he is trying to desperately win back to rebuild a Labour majority. I thought it was a very successful speech that did
it's interesting.
target those effectively.
Yeah, I want to cut in on that because you've hit on a good point for me there. A couple of years ago, potentially last year as well, Labour very inward looking at itself, looking to kick, frankly, a load of student politics out of it and get rid of a load of anti-Semitism crisis. Keir Starmer introducing himself. Hello, I'm Keir. Here's what I'm about. Now, very much a feeling like Labour is looking out, as you said. Labour is looking for those swing voters. It's looking, frankly, for a majority, isn't it? And has Keir Starmer portrayed himself as a man who might be able to deliver that off his own quality will, or, frankly, because the Tories have got themselves into a bit of a mess recently?
Well, I think so. The key thing is that Keir Starmer is positioning himself well, but he has not yet sold himself to voters. We do focus groups and polling all of the time, and the thing that really strikes me every time we do focus groups is the extent to which Keir Starmer as a leader has not cut through. Someone described him to me in a focus group in Wales a few weeks ago as a wet lettuce. He's seen as kind of quite a dull, not particularly exciting or inspiring politician, but he is focusing on the right things that Labour needs to focus on to win over those voters. And the more that the Conservative Party diverges away from those issues and focuses more on tax reform than, for example, the cost of living or the NHS, the more he is able to make that case to the British voters. So I think he's been given more territory at the moment, and it's up to him to make that case effectively to the electorate.
100%. Will, I mean, I must say it's been a massive release. I've not heard the words gender-neutral toilet once. I've only seen one person with rainbow-coloured hair, and the scale of dungarees and the use of the word comrade has been pretty limited, I must say. Will Tanner there, former Deputy Head of Policy at Number 10, who, as if we planned it, ladies and gentlemen, as if by magic, raised the point there about whether or not Sir Keir Starmer is actually too dull to be leader. Does he lack charisma? Is it all about being, I don't want to coin this phrase again, strong and stable? But we did hear Sir Keir Starmer's pitch to become the next Prime Minister. He did say he was going to turn the UK into a growth superpower. He argued that Labour was now the party being financially responsible after the pound plummeted in response to the Tories' plans to borrow billions and pay for massive tax cuts. He quoted Sir Tony, gosh, I hate saying that, Sir Tony Blair, as he accused the Tories of losing control of the economy. I have been asking people here at conference that key point, OK, whether or not they would rather have Keir Starmer or Tony Blair. Let's find out.
Starmer, because as far as I'm concerned, Tony Blair let me down.
Why?
Because of the war.
OK.
And we should never have gone in. It was based on a lie, and they should have done better.
In terms of being pro-European, and this is the European movement, I'd have to say Blair, of course.
Why, out of interest?
Because he was very much in favour of Europe and said so publicly.
Whereas Starmer, I mean, he voted Remain.
He voted Remain, and he is being more reticent about his view about Europe now. And it is our neighbours. They are all our neighbours are in Europe.
I think people want Starmer.
Why?
Well, I think he offers, it's quite comforting with Starmer because he's got a real integrity about him and he's someone you can really depend on, I think. And at the moment when we've got, the pound dropping at record rates, when we've got Liz Truss in where you don't know what she's going to do next, I think that's really what the country's after.
Probably Blair.
Why?
He was very charismatic, and he was, a bit more sort of forthcoming.
Do you think Starmer, whilst maybe a nice chap, is a bit dull?
No, I wouldn't say he was dull, because, his intentions are all there, aren't they? Maybe he needs to get a bit more enthused, but he's getting there.
Right, OK, bit of a mixed bag there. I'm joined now by John McTernan, who is a former advisor to Tony Blair whilst he was Prime Minister. Look, before I get stuck into Starmer's speech and all the stuff about Blair as well, I've got to just ask you very, very quickly, Rupa Huq being administratively suspended from the Labour Party, she basically said that Kwasi Kwarteng was only superficially black. Has Labour got a race problem?
No. Rupa has been suspended immediately. That's what Keir's party does. If somebody steps out of line, they get suspended and it all gets looked into. So I think swift action is the best answer.
Concerning that she said it at all, though?
Oh, look, I think the argument against Kwasi Kwarteng is his ideas are bad. It's not where he comes from. It's not how what his background is or anything.
That is the argument he was making.
Even where he went to school, I don't care where he went to school. Yeah. I care where he wants to send the country.
Do you think, based on that, what she said there, if a white person had said that, you'd be saying they were racist?
I've not seen I know that she's been suspended. I've not seen what she said. I just know that in Keir's party, if you say something that could cause problems, you're suspended immediately.
All right.
And that's the way it should be.
Well, I've got your comment on that. I won't drag you through it because that's not what we got you on for. So I hope you understand I have to ask you about that. Right. Keir Starmer, Tony Blair. Who's better in your opinion? Who's more charismatic? Who's got mass electability?
The best person to lead the Labour Party today is Keir Starmer, without a doubt.
Why?
Because he's got a view for the future. Tony was right for his time, Keir is right for this time. This is a Labour moment, but it's a Labour moment for a man with a plan. It's a Labour moment for a man who tore down Boris Johnson. It's a Labour moment for a guy who maybe doesn't think politics is such a game as Boris did, or that it's such an ideological thing as Liz Truss seems to think. It's a game. It's a place now for a Labour man that's a bit more like Clem Attlee than anybody else.
Right, so when Tony Blair was approaching a conference, okay, you must have been right there with him and he'd be going there to do his big speech and everything. What would his attitude be like? Was it like a bit of a rock star behind the scenes, getting himself all pumped up? How did he get that buzz in the room?
Tony had a great gift for speaking and a great deal of warmth he'd built up with the Labour Party. Remember, he stood first for Labour in 82, became an MP in 83, 11 years a backbencher before he became leader. And he was, he generated the same feeling in the chamber, in the conference chamber, as Starmer does, because he was a winner. People love a winner, and I think people can see in Keir the beginnings of a winner.
Has Starmer got a massive advantage, which is that now, a long time on, people can see all the different ways that Tony Blair has negatively affected Britain. Whereas with Keir Starmer, we haven't had the chance to see that yet, have we?
Tony can stand on his record. I think.
What record?
Solving an 800-year-old fight in Northern Ireland, that dispute, the Irish dispute, over.
But then the forces, some of the armed forces say he threw them under the bus.
No, he didn't. No, listen, I'll tell you. If you're in our armed forces, you're not above the law. If you shoot to kill, as the paratroopers did, if you murder civilians, you should be put on trial. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
What about the IRA, though?
The IRA were jailed.
We got letters of comfort.
No, they didn't. The IRA didn't get any covers. No, IRA members who were not being investigated by the authorities were told they weren't being investigated. That's a totally different thing. That's like if I was told I was not being investigated by the cops. That's not an amnesty or anything. That's just like informing me. Well, the thing is, Tony Blair ended the Tory party's homophobia, and that was good for the whole country.
That's interesting. That is interesting. Keir Starmer, a lot of the criticism of him has been about lack of charisma, okay? Do you think he needs a bit more of that? It's almost like you can't really teach it, isn't it? What would your advice to him be?
My advice to Keir would be go around and have a pint in every pub in the country.
He'd be legless. Well, they might not let him.
He's got 2.5 years. 2.5 years. If he goes and meets as many people as possible, he likes a beer, he loves football, he plays a neat game of five-a-side, he could get around the country. And that's what you have to do. You have to show the person you are. He can't pretend to be Churchill. Boris couldn't. He can't pretend to be Blair. No one can be Tony apart from Tony. He's got to be Starmer. And I think what we saw today was a man with a vision that's rooted in Britain. Why not Britain? And there's a great question.
The national anthem, the Union flag behind him there, I mean, let's be honest, that's a million miles away from where you were a couple of years
But also, we had Palestinian flags under Corbyn. Now we've got the Union flag. That's a huge difference, a big symbol. And also, next week, we may be having the Prime Minister's speech in the middle of a sterling crisis as the pound equals the dollar. So I'd rather be the Labour Party offering positive change and being the party of sound money. A great thing. And the party of property ownership. Stealing Thatcher's clothes as well as Blair's.
Yes. Dare we whisper it quietly, John? Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I enjoyed a bit of back and forth. John McTernan, political strategist, and of course, the guy who hung around with Blair. Rather too often for some people's liking, I'm only joking. Right, let's get some reaction now from Yorkshire, from the Yorkshire town of Dewsbury to Keir Starmer. Gosh, going all the way to Dewsbury. And apparently some people have been watching his speech there. We can cross there live now and talk to GB News' Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley. Anna, what have you got for us?
Good afternoon, Patrick. Yes, I'm here in Mirfield. It's part of the Dewsbury constituency. It's an area that's been predominantly Labour, but in that last election, they voted Conservative here. I'm joined by Tim Wood. We're here at his pub, the Old Colonial, and I'm also joined by Dan Smith. He's a business owner here. I think the main take-home things, we all watched Keir Starmer's speech together, was perhaps the energy bit. What did you take from his speech?
Well, to be fair, he came out with a lot of things which were quite good, but 2 years into term of office for him coming into office, should I say, he didn't give us very much hope as to how he was going to nail it all together, and indeed what type of nails he were going to use. Great speech, but 2 years away from a general election, the door's wide open, and it's wide open for him to come in here and discuss the matter further, how publicans feel about energy and funding of things. Great idea, great British Energy, smashing idea, but can he pull that one off? I don't know. There's 2 years to go, and to me, there were not a lot of nuts and bolts to fasten it all together there. Great speech overall.
And I'll just bring Dan in. Dan, you run a wood turning company here. What were your thoughts on the speech?
I think to touch on what Tim said, you know, the idea of having a British energy firm not buying in from abroad and actually buying in from a British company, I think it's a great idea. I'd like to have seen more detail on how they were going to achieve things, such as, you know, he mentioned about increasing solar by 300%. You know, how is he going to do that? How is it going to bring the homeowners in on it? Is it going to involve solar panels on the houses, etc.? Because actually, if you were to say a little bit more detail, it might give us a little bit more encouragement and give us an opportunity to ask him more questions on it. So.
Thank you both. Yeah, so here they're encouraged by what Keir Starmer's had to say, but they want to see how he's going to put it into action.
Anna Riley there, thank you very much, reporting from Dewsbury to get the views on the ground, a reaction to Keir Starmer's keynote speech. Well, this is GB News Live. We've been Patrick Christys here in Liverpool, but coming up, we're going to be hearing why former Top Gear presenter Jeremy Clarkson is calling on the government to reduce farming regulation. Let's row back on red tape. Easy for me to say. I'll be back in a moment. We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello there, just after 2:30, I'm Polly Middlehurst in the GB newsroom, and the headlines this hour. The Labour leader has promised he'll create a publicly owned green energy company within a year if he's elected. Sir Keir Starmer said his plans for Great British Energy, as it'll be known, would provide British power to the British people. His keynote speech at his party's conference came after days of financial market uncertainty in the wake of the Chancellor's mini-budget. Speaking in Liverpool, Sir Keir also took aim at the government and said, "Don't forget, don't forgive."
The government has lost control of the British economy. And for what? They've crashed the pound. And for what? My government will be different. We will run towards the challenges of tomorrow. We will get us out of this endless cycle of crisis. And we will do it with a fresh start, a new set of priorities, and a new way of governing.
Well, the Chancellor has told City investors he's confident in the government's long-term plan for growth after the pound hit a record low against the dollar. Kwasi Kwarteng reiterated the government's commitment to fiscal sustainability in a meeting with pension funds, insurers and asset managers. Next month, he'll set out a package of regulatory reforms for the UK's financial services sector to drive growth and, he says, incentivise investment. Meanwhile, the Labour MP Rupa Huq has been suspended from the Labour Party after making a racist comment about the Chancellor. Ms Huq is being accused of calling Kwasi Kwarteng superficially black. She was recorded making the comment at a Labour Party fringe conference yesterday. Labour has condemned the comments, calling them totally inappropriate. Next year's Eurovision Song Contest will be held either in Glasgow or Liverpool. The BBC said the two remaining cities, which both have Riverside Arena venues, had the strongest overall offer. The broadcaster says a final decision will be made within weeks. You're up to date on TV, on radio and online. You're with GB News, the People's Channel. Quick snapshot of today's markets for you. The pound will buy you $1.077 and 1.121 euros. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,516 and 75 pence an ounce.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the Labour Party conference with me, Patrick Christys, here in Liverpool. But don't worry, it's not all Labour here, because presenter Jeremy Clarkson is leading calls for the government to halve the amount of regulation affecting the countryside before the next general election. So, in a letter to the PM, Jeremy Clarkson says that rural businesses are being hit with a bureaucratic bulldozer which costs jobs and creates misery. Nearly 5,000 people, including 2,000 farmers, have added their signatures to the letter, which accuses the government of trying to micromanage every acre. I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of excessive rules in my life, let alone what it must be like for farmers. I'm joined by farmer Gareth Wynne-Jones, who's signed the letter to the Prime Minister. Gareth, thank you very much. Weirdly, I am actually currently looking at a stall at Labour Party conference with NFU on it, a tractor, some hedgerows and a picture of a cow. Why have you signed this thing? What are all the rules and regs affecting your life?
Well, look, I've just got to congratulate Clarkson, and we can see why he's put this letter together.
Oh, there we go. I tell you what, though, I can fill for time for a little bit because Jeremy Clarkson's new show on Amazon, by the way, which is great, Clarkson's Farm, does exactly this. It highlights all of the significant costs that it takes to actually set up a farm, and then on top of that as well, the cost of running it, and just the daily trials and tribulations and how much work and effort and everything it is. But when I think of Britain, ladies and gentlemen, I think of the rolling countryside, I think of farmers, I think of all of that stuff, and the idea now that we've had them curtailed and cut off at the knees is frankly quite staggering. When Liz Truss talks about going for growth, maybe she could let farmers go for a bit of growth of their own, cut back the red tape. Who really cares if there's, you know, one additional pesticide on something, if something's really been tested this amount of times? I certainly don't, but hey, what do I know? Right, we're going to come back to farming because instead of ditching farming red tape, unfortunately our guest ditched himself with a poor internet connection, so we're going to have to whiz through this. But lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts about Keir Starmer's speech at the Labour Party conference, which is just as well, because otherwise I'd still be talking about the countryside. Scott says, so if you love the countryside around you, or if you're a farmer, you best get ready for solar farms. Let's ignore self-sufficiency within the food sector. All this in a climate that doesn't favour solar power. This green agenda is so poorly thought through. Darryl has been on. Underprivileged working class background, do me a favour. He wouldn't know suffering if it bit him on the bottom. I'm assuming he's talking about Keir Starmer there, because Keir Starmer made a lot of comment during his Labour Party speech about the idea that he was working class and that he was essentially, you know, the NHS bled through his veins and all of this stuff, okay? And that his dad was a tool maker. It just turned out that, yeah, keep your jokes to yourselves. And that his dad basically did own the factory there, apparently. Anyway, Kenneth has been on. Kenneth says, I thought that maybe that basically Liz Truss would cut immigration, but no, she hasn't. Interesting stuff there anyway. Okay, right, well, I am going to be asking a little bit about whether or not Liz Truss's government has lost control of the economy. And we'll be talking, I believe, to Liam Halligan on this particular topic. Liam joins me now. Thank you very much. Liam, look, what Keir Starmer was trying to do there was put some clear division between himself and the Conservative Party. You could argue the Conservative Party had done that for him, really, with Kwasi Kwarteng's massive package. Controlled immigration as well as another topic that we've got here. The economic divide. Talk to me about nationalisation, OK? This great British energy.
He basically had to sort of spread himself across the political spectrum today, because on the one hand, he wanted to show, you know, middle Britain, if you like, centre ground voters, the kind of people he's going to need to win the election, that the Labour Party is now the party in fiscal responsibility. They can find money for the top 1%, even though there's a cost of living crisis. The Tories have crashed sterling. They've lost control of the economy. At the same time, though, of course, he had to throw something to the left of the party, and he got the biggest cheer of all for when he said he would create, the Labour Party in government would create Great British Energy. Now, we don't know what that means. Is he going to nationalise the whole of the British energy sector? We don't know. Or is it just going to be one company? Though he did confirm that whatever it is, it would be in public ownership. And on the words in public ownership, instant standing ovation and the longest applause of the entire speech.
Yeah, I couldn't help but wonder whether or not Keir Starmer's entire speech could have just been, and to one continuous standing ovation, just NHS, nationalisation, that kind of stuff. One thing I've been desperate to talk to you about for a while now, and I'm glad that you've come back on, is about no tax cuts for top earners. Oh, and we're going to use this to help fund the NHS and staff within the NHS. Does that add up?
It doesn't add up, because the cut of the top rate of income tax, what's called the additional rate, from 45 to 40%, 40p in the pound, it doesn't really raise much money. It's a couple of £1 billion, which is small change when it comes to the public finances. And Patrick, cutting that top rate of tax, it may even gain you money. So we don't really know. What really costs money in Kwasi Kwarteng's mini budget, massive misnomer, of course, because it's been so hugely influential on currency markets and elsewhere. What really costs money is that energy price cap. And no one would say we don't need the energy price cap. That could cost 50, 100, 150, 200 billion. No one knows, because it depends, of course, on wholesale energy prices. What I would say, maybe, you know, the rules are different when you stand at a dispatch box and you're giving like a sort of budget type statement. What you say then, it must add up. Your in the House of Commons. There's sort of slightly looser rules in politics if you're sort of tub-thumping, high rhetoric at a party conference. But if you look at this speech, we're going to nationalise at least part of our energy industry. Well, that's double-digit billions. We're going to insulate 16 million homes. Well, that's double.
And continue to support Ukraine.
It adds up. The financial clock is ticking, and so. I'm sure the Tories will come back now with, you said Kwasi Kwarteng's mini budget was expensive. What about your conference speech?
Well, indeed, this is it. And of course, he got everyone to stand up and say basically support for Ukraine and say something I can't pronounce in Ukrainian. Was it Slava Ukraine or something? I don't know. Anyway, he got everyone
to Ukraine.
There you go. Thank you very much. It's good to have a speaker here. But and he was saying all that. Well, that costs money as well. We've got all sorts of stuff here that costs money. And it does make me wonder whether or not actually much of it adds up. I suppose that's the question as old as time. When it comes
politics is about feeling and emotion. It's people like you and me, we analyse closely what's said. We look at the numbers and we build spreadsheets and all this kind of thing. But most people vote on feeling and credibility.
Yes.
And there's absolutely no doubt, Patrick, the Tories are losing ground. Objectively, they're losing ground when it comes to their reputation for fiscal competence. That's why so many Conservative MPs are nervous at what's been happening on currency markets, and in particular on the market for debt, which translates into more expensive mortgages. So he had an open goal today. He didn't hit the corner flag. Maybe he hit the post.
It wasn't quite a yap stand penalty that ends up in Rosette. Liam Halligan.
Come on, he's got the best record for penalties.
I saved one of his penalties on Friday Night Feast as a challenge Christys. We digress. Liam Halligan there, our economics and business editor. Only myself and Mark Crosley have ever done that, Liam. Anyway, right. Jasmine Birtles now, founder of MoneyMagpie.com. Great to have you on the show, reacting again to this budget. I cannot wait, Jasmine, to be at Conservative Party conference up in Birmingham next week, Monday and Tuesday, to get the reactions to all of this as the Tories try to strike back. But at the minute, tax cuts for the rich, let's just say what it is, I suppose tax cuts for the rich, have gone down like a cup of cold sick in this economic climate, with certainly everyone here at Labour Party conference.
Well, it's not just for the rich. Those are the ones that have been making the headlines, but it is basically for all workers. All sorts of people are getting more money in their pockets. And, historically, when taxes have been cut, paradoxically, tax take goes up. So I think this is one of those plans that needs to be given a bit of time. We need to wait for it to work, essentially.
Can I ask Jasmine, can I just cut in, Jasmine, and just ask, hang on a minute, actually, is everyone letting Keir Starmer off a bit lightly here? Because we've had loads of stuff we've just spoken about with Liam Halligan there. 100 billion quid for an energy price cap, big green energy, great British energy. OK, sounds brilliant. He was stood in front of a union flag while he said it. We've got no idea what that means at the minute. We've got strikes coming out of our backsides at the moment. The cost of living crisis is still there. He wants controlled immigration with a points-based system, but not really said how he's going to manage all of that out. We've got all sorts coming our way, funding more nurses. Hang on a minute, at least Kwasi Kwarteng tried to add it up.
Yes, but then that's the great thing when you're not actually in power. You can promise all kinds of things. And as you say, some of those are really good ideas. I like the idea of Great British Energy, marvellous. But yeah, it would be really good to actually put a price tag on them all, add them up and go, oh, hang on a sec. No, we can't actually. OK, let's, idea 2. Let's do half of everything that we've suggested. But in speeches like we're having right now, it's lots of euphoria, lots of good fun being had by all. I'm sure nobody is really actually in the building at the moment, unlike apart from you and Liam, actually adding the numbers up.
But that's a massive problem, right? Because if Keir Starmer's, and this is where, I must say he hasn't yet, but this is where I fear for Keir. Because if you bracket yourself as a man of honour, integrity and forensic detail, the second your sums don't add up or something, and there's no indication of this, by the way, but something fruity comes out about your private life, then all of that is shattered, OK? So if Keir's policies don't add up and they don't make sense, and he's not got the forensic detail there correct, and he's not a man of his word, right? He's not honest and he's not got his integrity, then he's screwed, isn't he?
Well, ultimately, yes. But then, Boris Johnson managed for quite a long time on all of that. So it really depends on your level of charisma. I personally think that Keir Starmer lacks charisma. He shouldn't do. He's a good-looking man, but there's something about him that just, leaves one cold. And I think that's possibly more of a problem for him than his actual ability to make promises that he can keep, because we're kind of used to politicians making promises that they don't only not keep but go completely against.
Yes. Jasmine, just quickly, very quickly, sorry about this, I'm getting shouted at. I just wanted to set the record straight. Did I hear that correctly? Did you just describe Sir Keir Starmer as a good-looking man?
Yes. Well, he's all right. Hey, come on, he's not bad looking, compared to most of them. Which, by the way, of course, you and Liam are too. Can I just say, I think it's already written in many, many places just what incredible lookers both you and Liam are. Hello.
Good grief. Well, yes. I do very well amongst the blind community. Jasmine Birtles, thank you very much. Founder at moneymagpie.com. Great to have you on the show. I'll take that compliment. Coming up, another blow for the government. Oh, gosh. As their border policies in the UK to stop illegal migration hit the skids. Their so-called rapid returns deal with Albania to deport Channel migrants within days of arriving has been cast into doubt after reports that those who claim to be seeking asylum could be exempt from the measure. Basically, if you land on a beach right now and you just say you want asylum, it looks, as far as I'm concerned, from where I'm sitting, like you just get to stay here. Is that the Britain you want? Tell me how you feel. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I'll be back in 2.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. It's not all Labour Party conference related here. There is a big world of news out there and something that I know is a massive topic for the vast majority of you watching at home, listening on your radio, whatever you're doing. Government lawyers have now said that the Albanian rapid returns deal, i.e. people who are mostly rocking up on the beaches in Dover, to deport those who arrive from the Eastern European country will not apply to those seeking asylum. As far as I can tell, all you have to do to seek asylum is say that you're seeking asylum, but there we are. Refugee charity Care for Calais requested disclosure for the deal, and the government's legal department responded by saying that asylum seekers, quote, will not be subject to the arrangements. Well, the charity is framing this as a U-turn on the previous government policy set out by Priti Patel this summer. How long ago does it feel like when we were about to watch a plane take off to Rwanda, ladies and gentlemen? But the Home Office informed us that the majority of Albanians crossing the Channel are no longer seeking asylum when they get here, meaning they're still committed to implementing the plan. I don't believe that, but there we go. We'll have to wait and see. So, is the government's border policy working, or is it yet more evidence that it isn't? Joining me now is the director of the Orthodox Conservative think tank, Joseph Robertson. Joseph, thank you very much. Look, please tell me that I'm wrong about this, but at the minute, what it would seem is that I can leave a perfectly happy home in Albania, travel across Europe, get in a boat around the Calais area, sail that boat across the Channel, land on a beach in England, kiss the British sand and say I'm an asylum seeker, and Bob's your uncle, I don't apply to a rapid return scheme.
Well, it's yet more evidence that a government that seems to be following its conservative instincts is once again deciding to change its tune and actually go more in the direction of where it was previously. We're seeing once again open border policies, just as we've announced tax slashes, which was, I think, alerting some of our conservative fiscal instincts that maybe something good was going to happen. We've just been told we're going to get even more immigration, and this is further proof of that. Once again, the Red Wall voters have been let down. Those have been calling for immigration to cease, not only in its illegal form, but also in legal measures to be reduced, and now seeing that thrown back in their faces, and we're left with more of the same.
Yeah, and I must say, one thing I find absolutely staggering is that, as far as I can tell, the Home Office statement there is asking people like you and I and the vast majority of the British public to believe the fact that most Albanian people arriving here now are not saying that they are asylum seekers, which is why they're still committed to this policy. So they want us to believe that these people have gone to all of the length to get here illegally and then essentially volunteered themselves for deportation at the end of it.
Well, it's giving them an opportunity to essentially go hard on their mandate of opening up to more immigration as a way of boosting our economy, and thereby, as you said, justifying illegal immigrants and saying that they're actually now part of our workforce that we have to accept and integrate with. And I think this is more of the same rhetoric that's been used by consecutive Conservative governments to operate to the left of Blair on immigration, and essentially move towards a policy that doesn't want to guard our borders, that doesn't want to take back sovereignty post-Brexit, and wants to incorporate us as part of the European bloc of free flow of mass migration. I've got to say, even some European countries seem to have harder borders right now than we do, and considering we're an island, I thought that would have been impossible.
Yeah, one would have thought. I mean, previously, going back to medieval times, when you built a castle, you put a moat around it. You put a moat around it for a reason. We've got a moat in this country, but we've just got an Uber service operating in it from as far as I can tell. But is there anyone in this country at the moment pumping out an actual conservative immigration policy? Because from where I can see right now, Keir Starmer said he wants controlled immigration. Yeah, I believe that when I see it, Keir. Thank you very much. Points-based. Well, I suppose if everybody gets points, then they all win prizes, don't they? And then we've got Liz Truss, who wants more legal immigration and isn't really doing anything about illegal immigration. Who wants to stop illegal immigration to the UK?
Well, I was hoping, I had high hopes for Suella Braverman, talking about bringing us out of the ECHR, a true Conservative with proper Conservative instincts. I thought that having her in the Cabinet was going to shake things up. But in these first few weeks of the new government, we haven't seen any move away from the ECHR. We haven't seen any rewriting of how our human rights constitution is going to look here in the UK. We haven't seen anything that really gets us out of the bureaucratic net of Brussels in terms of how we view migrants coming into this country from mainland Europe. And I think if the Conservative Party wants to really reconnect with its membership and maybe draw back in some of those voters who left to UKIP and the Brexit Party back in 2016, it's going to have to take a far harder line. The reality is legal and illegal immigration both need to be looked at more seriously. We need to get out of the ECHR as soon as possible.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I think the idea now that it's not just foreign judges actually stopping us from deporting people that we want to, the fact that we're not even really trying to is potentially a bit of a kick in the proverbials for a lot of people. Joseph Robertson, thank you very much. Joseph there, who is director of the Orthodox Conservative think tank. I can't help but wonder, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think about this at home. GBViews at gbnews.uk. How much of Liz Truss's new cabinet, how much did our Home Secretary know about this going in? Suella Braverman, traditionally one who's taken a stronger line when it comes to certainly illegal immigration, certainly when it comes to legal immigration and the numbers of it as well. Has she been sidelined? Is there already division in the Conservative cabinet? You contrast that with where I am right now in Liverpool at the Labour Party conference, and well, it's more united than the Labour Party's been for a very, very long time. Concerning stuff if you are a Tory voter. But you are with Patrick Christys right here on GB News Live at the moment as you join me from that Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Coming up, more on that news, though, that Labour MP Rupa Huq has been suspended from the party after she described, I cannot believe it, well, actually, depressingly, I can believe this, Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng as superficially black. I know, I was so shocked I nearly choked. But we'll have more from our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who's joining me next. But before that, it's your weather. Shock horror, it's raining here.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern with the latest weather from the Met Office. Rain or showers continuing in many places this evening. Clear spells, though, in between the showers. And as a result, a chilly night to come for some. Our wind direction at the moment is northwesterly, those winds coming around an area of low pressure sitting in the North Sea. And around that low, we've also got a number of weather fronts. One feature crossing north to south across the country, bringing showers, and another skirting parts of Cornwall and West Devon to bring some more prolonged rain. That rain eventually petering out through the early hours, although still some showers following, and showers will continue in many western and eastern fringes overnight with clear spells in between. And under those clear skies, temperatures dipping away. We're looking at the mid to low single figures in some sheltered spots. But we start off Wednesday with sunny spells, although a chill in the air. There will be plenty of bright weather out there. And actually, for many, we'll avoid the showers, especially through this central swathe. But western and eastern parts will still see further showers and a brisk breeze, and that will make it feel on the cool side, 14 to 16 Celsius typically. Spells of rain pushing in from the North Sea then into northeast England, and that toppling into the rest of northern England, the Midlands, and as it pushes south through the early hours of Thursday, it will turn to showers before it reaches South Wales and southern England. Further showers come in across northern parts of the UK overnight as well. In between the showers, there will also be some clear spells, but it won't be quite as cool, I think, overnight because of the additional cloud cover, and so temperatures more like the high single figures than the low single figures. We start off Thursday with plenty of bright weather. There'll still be some showers, especially in the north and the east, those showers on the heavy side around northern England as well as eastern Scotland. Friday sees more prolonged rain arrive as well as a strengthening wind. Bright spells and showers on Saturday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio, and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. It's just gone 5 o'clock and I am very much live at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. This is GB News Live, very on brand with me, Patrick Christys. Coming up this hour, the latest reaction to the news that MP Rupa Huq has been suspended from the Labour Party. Why? Well, it's a classic. She described Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng as superficially black. We'll have the reaction from one of her fellow MPs. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if a white MP had said something similar like that about somebody else? We'll also bring you more reaction to the keynote speech made by Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer as he addressed party members right here in Liverpool. He's vowed to get the UK out of what he calls an endless cycle of crisis. Well, good luck with that. And are any of our government's border policies actually working? Do we even have any border policies? Because the latest revelation suggests that the government's so-called rapid returns deal with Albania should just be called a you can stay forever deal, as we are not going to be able to deport anybody, basically, who is seeking asylum, or at least claims that they are seeking asylum. Are we staring at another failure of our border controls? Before that, it's all your latest news.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Good afternoon to you. The Labour leader has promised he'll create a publicly owned green energy company within a year if he's elected. Sir Keir Starmer said his plans for Great British Energy, as it would be called, would provide British power to the British people. His keynote speech at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool came after days of financial market uncertainty in the wake of the Chancellor's mini-budget. Speaking in Liverpool in the last hour, Sir Keir also took aim at the government and said, don't forget, don't forgive.
The government has lost control of the British economy. And for what? They've crashed the pound. And for what? My government will be different. We will run towards the challenges of tomorrow. We will get us out of this endless cycle of crisis. And we will do it with a fresh start, a new set of priorities and a new way of governing.
Well, the Chancellor has told City investors he's confident in the government's long-term plan for growth after the pound hit a record low against the dollar. Kwasi Kwarteng reiterated the government's commitment to fiscal sustainability in a meeting with pension funds, insurers and asset managers. Next month, he'll set out a package of regulatory reforms for the UK's financial services sector to drive growth and, he says, incentivise investment. Well, as you've been hearing, the Labour MP Rupa Huq has been suspended from the Parliamentary Labour Party after making a racist comment about the Chancellor. Ms Huq is being accused of calling Kwasi Kwarteng superficially black. She was recorded making the comment at a Labour conference fringe event yesterday. Labour has condemned the comments, calling them totally inappropriate. Now, Ofgem has issued a warning to most of the UK's gas and electricity providers that they need to supply more support to households struggling to pay their bills. The energy regulator says all providers need to fulfil their obligations in helping customers who have difficulty paying. Following a market review, it found process failures in companies, except for British Gas, giving help to those who needed payment plans. Workers at the UK's largest container ports have begun fresh strikes today in a dispute over pay. Around 19,000 members of the Unite Union at the port of Felixstowe have walked out following an 8-day stoppage last month. The strike is planned to continue until next Wednesday. Felixstowe representatives say they've exhausted all measures trying to reach a deal with workers.
This strike is about pay. We've offered and we are implementing a pay deal of 7% plus £500. That dates from the 1st of January when CPI inflation was 5.4%, and there'll be another pay award due on the 1st of January, so in a little over 3 months' time.
The UK's counter-terrorism police is warning the threat from terrorism remains very real, with officers intercepting 32 attacks over the last 5 years. The Deputy Assistant Commissioner told the International Security Expo in London threats are mainly from self-initiated terrorists who are difficult to detect. He said, "We all need to remain vigilant. The authorities are currently running 800 counter-terror investigations, while the official terrorism threat level is still substantial, meaning an attack is likely." The Kremlin says it can't rule out sabotage as the cause of damage to its Nord Stream gas pipeline. 3 offshore lines running under the Baltic Sea developed unexplained leaks yesterday. An investigation has now been launched into the cause, and officials say it's impossible to estimate when the gas network will be restored. Japan has held a state funeral for the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the first such event in the country in 55 years. Abe's ashes were carried in a military procession through central Tokyo alongside a 19-gun salute. Thousands of spectators queued to lay flowers and bowed to a picture of the former premier. The ceremony was not without controversy, however. Nationwide, protests were taking place, arguing the event was too expensive, being held at a time of economic struggles within the country. Eurostar says the impact of the pandemic and Brexit means it's currently not possible to reopen closed stations. Writing to the Transport Committee, the operator's CEO said additional border checks for UK citizens have led to significant increases in processing times at stations. The now necessary stamping of British passports by Continental Police adds about 15 seconds to border control processing times per person. Next year's Eurovision Song Contest will be held in either Glasgow or Liverpool. The BBC said the 2 remaining cities, which both have Riverside Arena venues, had the strongest overall offers. The broadcaster says a final decision will be made within weeks. And that's it. You with GB News, the People's Channel. More news as it happens.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Patrick Christys right here live at the Labour Party conference, and the Labour MP Rupa Huq has been suspended. So the whip suspended after she was accused of making a racist comment by claiming that the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng was superficially black. The former Shadow Home Office Minister was recorded at an event held on Monday during a fringe event as part of Labour's annual conference in Liverpool. Joining me now to discuss this latest development is GB News' political editor Darren McCaffrey. Darren, the last thing that Sir Keir Starmer needed, shortly after he's just done his big keynote speech in the room opposite me here, is an MP essentially being accused of racism.
Indeed, and we have to say that they acted pretty quickly, didn't they, suspending her. By the way, in the last minute, as you were talking, we've got a statement through from Rupa Huq.
Here we go.
In the last hour that we hadn't heard from her. She's offered Kwasi Kwarteng, the Chancellor, her sincere and heartfelt apologies for what she calls her ill-judged comments, describing, of course, the Chancellor as superficially black. Let's just remind you of those comments. They're the actual full bit. So she was at a fringe meeting and she recorded saying that, of the Chancellor, that he is a black man. He went to Eton, I think. He went to a very expensive prep school, all the way through top schools in the country. If you hear him on the Today programme, you wouldn't know he's black.
The implication there, which is very bizarre, is that in order to be black, you would have to be, I suppose, impoverished and working class and sound like it as well, which is just bizarre, really, I think.
Yeah, and understandably, the Labour Party have said it's offensive.
Yeah.
They said she had to apologise. Angela Rayner said that. She's clearly now done that. Tory Party, again, unsurprisingly, outraged about it all, including from people like Sajid Javid, the former Chancellor. Is this the last thing Keir Starmer needs? It is. Is it overshadowing the speech a bit? It is. I think in the grand scheme of things, when we step back from conference, it won't necessarily be that big a deal. But, you know what? having had such a good week, this is not what Keir Starmer wanted. And she has had the whip withdrawn as well, remember.
Yeah.
There is this investigation.
Swift action.
I'm not entirely sure what the investigation is, but the very fact that Labour reacted within hours of this coming out is a sign that they wanted to get a lid on this and deal with it as quickly as they could.
Yes, indeed, and that's been a key point as well, which is that Labour actually historically took a very long time, long-winded approach when it came to anti-Semitism, etc. Now with this, they've moved quickly within really hours of these very ill-judged remarks. I suppose the investigation, one would assume, is to determine whether or not she actually is a racist, because if these comments are taken at face value, then one can assume that potentially there are some undertones there. But we will have to wait and see, Darren, won't we? We will have to wait and see. Darren McCaffrey there, our political editor. Well, as we just heard, Keir Starmer made some rather large pledges in his speech earlier, promising a fresh start for the UK, focusing on green energy, spreading opportunity to all. Our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, has been at this Labour conference today. Yes, indeed he has. He was over there a second ago, gathering reaction from MPs.
It's given us some really concrete things to tell people on the doorstep, really putting flesh on the bone of why a Labour government would be massively different to a Tory government. And if we didn't need, we needed a contrast. What happened on Friday in the House of Commons, I was there, ripping up all the fiscal rules, shattering the Tories' reputation for monetary responsibility. And we are now seeing what the alternative is here. And I think I'm really invigorated to get back out on my doorsteps and say to people, not just, I'm sorry, it's really difficult, but there is now a real alternative, voting Labour. Because nationalising the private industries would be hugely expensive and wouldn't deliver immediate change to the consumer. This is saying for all that new energy that's going to be created, and of course we don't have state aid issues now because we're not in Europe, we can set up something that's basically a co-op owned by the people, for the people, and reducing energy bills. In my own constituency we've got smaller models of this in some of our estates, which is creating green, cheap energy for people, running their estates, and it's helped create jobs. So it's actually replicating what's being done out there by some of the best councils. So it's really a great idea, and it's one of the best ways of doing it fast, because we'll be getting on with it and doing it ourselves, and there's a real mission there.
OK, well, that was some reaction that we heard there as Tom Harwood was ferreting around, desperately trying to get the reaction from MPs, members of the public as well, to Sir Keir Starmer's keynote speech. And Sir Keir Starmer claimed a change. He changed the Labour Party and that he can turn it into a UK growth superpower. That was in his speech earlier on, just in a room over the way from me. And maybe, just maybe, it's working, because it comes as a new poll by YouGov has revealed that the party has surged to its largest lead over the Conservatives since Tony Blair's landslide victory in 2001. In case you are wondering, Labour is 17 points clear of Liz Truss's party. It was just 10 points clear, I say just, this time yesterday when I was sat in this very seat. Lots to get stuck into. I'm joined, rather helpfully, in case you're wondering who this chap is, by Stephen Timms, a Labour MP, the Labour MP for East Ham. I take it that you were gripped by what Keir Starmer had to say in there. You were on the edge of your seat, were you?
I was, actually. It was, I thought, a very gripping speech. I mean, obviously the backdrop is the rather remarkable turn of events on Friday, when the Conservative Party kind of threw away economic competence and announced a massive borrowing binge in order to give tax handouts to people who are already well off. And I think there's been a real sense of revulsion for that change.
I get that, right? But have Labour costed any of this at the minute? We're hearing about Great British Energy, a nationalisation programme. I don't know anything about the money on that one. 100 billion quid for a price freeze for energy bills. We're going to look at no tax cuts for the top earners, directly looking to pump that into the NHS and NHS staff, while economics editor said that doesn't add up.
That's right. No, it does add up. And Keir made it clear in his speech that everything we're going to be announcing will be properly costed, and we will reduce borrowing over a period. Now, it is absolutely right during the pandemic and now to be borrowing to get people through the huge difficulties that everybody is facing. But it's got to be sustainable. You can't just borrow forever, which appeared to be what the Chancellor announced on Friday. And our commitment will be over a period to bring borrowing down. And the figures will all be set out for how that's going to be done.
So we'll just have to wait and see, will we?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to go ahead with the corporation tax cut, for example. That's about £17 billion worth. So the figures will add up.
Interesting stuff, actually. Just the mood generally at this conference. A quiet confidence, it must be said. We've seen union flags dotted around the national anthem. Some other policies here. Look, he said he's not going to reverse Brexit. I don't really think that we ever thought he necessarily was. Fascinating one here. Controlled immigration and a points-based immigration system. I wonder how that's going to go down well with some, certainly towards the left of the Labour Party, who potentially would want basically open borders.
No, I don't think any part of the Labour Party, certainly the Labour Party corporately, has never argued that we should have open borders. It does need to be properly managed, but it needs to be fair. And too often, under the current Home Office arrangements, things are not fair, partly just because it's such a shambles. People wait for months, if not years, for their applications
that they can
to
stay
be determined, or whatever. And it's just a mess. That all does need to be sorted out. But there's got to be a properly managed, fair system that everybody can understand. But I think you're right about the confidence. That was, I thought, a different tone about Keir's speech today. There is a new confidence on his part and on the party.
Look, there is. It's undeniable. There really is. And it's interesting because, look, with the best will in the world, Keir Starmer, all these links to Tony Blair, he's not Tony Blair, right, for a variety of different reasons. He's just not. And he's not got that same delivery, you could argue maybe the natural element of charisma. I don't know whether or not it's just because Boris Johnson has gone and we're now comparing him with the way that Liz Truss talks, or whether he's got better. But his delivery today, I've got to be honest with you, was pretty good.
It was a good deal better, and I think it was about confidence rather than who you're comparing him with. There is a new confidence on his part, and to some extent, of course, that is about, I think, the change of Conservative leadership and the change of Prime Minister and what they've been doing over the last week. But it was clear in the delivery and in the content, I think, as well.
I just wonder whether or not there's a slight issue for you guys on the Labour side of the fence, which is that the next general election might be a couple of years away. And by then, the specific economic situation we're seeing ourselves in right now may well have changed. We may well end up with a situation where this Tory go for growth policy has paid off at least a bit, and people aren't quite as desperate as they are today. This divide between, I hate to put it in black and white terms, but, you know, tax cuts for the rich and robbing the poor, etc., might not exist, and therefore the wind might be sucked out of Keir's sails.
Well, let's see. I mean, Boris Johnson, for all his faults, was onto something, I think, when he was talking about levelling up. He acknowledged the need for tackling regional inequalities, whereas the implication from Friday is that inequality is a great thing because it forces everybody to work and boosts the economy. Now, I don't think that is an electorally winning proposition that the Conservative Party has got behind as of last Friday.
I think it just relies on people being able to actually physically look in their bank accounts and see more money, as opposed to being able to have it justified to you verbally.
Yeah, but the only people who are going to see more money are people who earn more than £155,000 a year. I mean, it's the top 1%, as Keir said in his speech today. And I don't see that as being a winning proposition, but we'll see.
We will indeed. Look, again, people talked about whether or not the Rupa Huq stuff is going to overshadow Keir's speech. I've asked you rather a lot of questions about Keir's speech, so I hope people don't think it's been overshadowed, but I do have to actually really ask you about this, and indeed I want to. For far too long, in my opinion, I was sitting here reporting on a nastiness amongst certain groups in the Labour Party, whether it's to do with anti-Semitism or whatever, student-level politics, pigeonholing, all this kind of stuff. And are we back there now? Rupa Huq's comments about Kwasi Kwarteng being superficially black. Look, can I just say, if either you or I, as white men, had said anything like that, we'd never work again. It'd be racist, wouldn't it?
Well, Rupa certainly is not a nasty person, but she's been suspended. She's had the whip withdrawn from her.
Do you think what she said was racist?
It's an extremely unwise and I think mistaken thing to say, and I hope that she would recognise that. And I think the response of the party, the response of Keir very quickly, just taking her off the whip, is the right thing to do.
If Boris Johnson or someone else on the right, Jacob Rees-Mogg, had said that, you'd be sat here now saying they were racist, wouldn't you?
I probably wouldn't myself, but I think it was wrong, and whoever said it, I think it would be wrong.
OK, and so as far as you're concerned, Labour hasn't got a race problem? Because Keir Starmer's, he mentioned earlier on in his speech about trying to move away from anti-Semitism and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
To be dragged immediately back into a little bit of a race row, as it were. You think that this is an isolated incident?
Yeah, and a fairly minor one, which has been very quickly dealt with, absolutely rightly.
Look, thank you very much. And
Thank
just
you.
for the sake of clarity as well, you were stood for rather a long time waiting to come on over there, so we do appreciate your time. Thank you very,
Thank you
very
for having
much.
me.
No, great to have you on, Stephen Timms there. Of course, the Labour MP for East Ham. What do you make of all of that? Everybody, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Well, Sir Keir Starmer has claimed that a changed Labour can turn the UK into a growth superpower. That last MP that we heard from there certainly thinks so as well. But what do you think? Because it comes as a new YouGov poll has revealed that the party has surged to its largest lead over the Tories since Tony Blair's years, since his landslide victory in 2001. Labour now 17 points clear of Liz Truss's party. And joining me to discuss all of this is Conservative commentator Alex Dean. Alex, thank you very, very much.
Right, Patrick.
Wow, you must be crying into your real ale at the minute, Alex. A 17-point lead for the Labour Party. Good grief! Do you ever think you'd see the day since 2001?
I don't know. Here we are mid-term. Margaret Thatcher always used to ask how they were doing in the polls and say not low enough, because mid-term is when you do things. Doing things is generally unpopular with the electorate, and then you ramp up your support when an election next comes. No doubt about it, Labour's got the wind in its sails at present, and you've got to give Keir Starmer a great deal of credit for dealing with the ugly business with Rupa Huq so decisively today. I think that's a good indication of a leadership that's certain of itself, secure, and is in a good position. So you certainly can't underestimate them. But my point would be there's one poll that matters, it's an election, and that's still some way off.
Look, absolutely 100%, and this is going to be the big thing that we're going to have to just look at this in a couple of years' time. But what I will say, Alex, and it's not just because I've been here for a few days and been in amongst it. There is definitely something happening. There is definitely a change. There's definitely a change in the Labour Party itself. There is definitely a change when it comes to Keir Starmer himself. Good grief, he looked like a different man, kind of. And I'm wondering whether or not there's a change in the psyche of the British public. What can Liz Truss do to claw this back?
Well, look, I think she's done the right things and set out her stall in the right way. The Conservative Party believes in a smaller state. If you think about parties that have made transformative differences to our country, the Blair Brown years did. You and I may not like it, but they did. They grew the state out quite significantly. The last government to try to reform the state and to reform tax in this kind of transformative way was the Thatcher government, a government to which this administration would like to openly compare itself, I think, in a lot of ways. Now, admittedly, Lawson did the structural reforms and then delivered on the tax cuts, and this government's basically doing it the other way around. Here are the tax cuts. Now we've got to reform the state because we've shrunk the tax base, I suppose, would be part of the logic. But the point, I think, for me is that they've made a big, bold gesture, and doing nothing would have been one hell of a risk as well. I believe in what this government's doing, and I believe significantly in these tax cuts. But yes, of course, it gives ammunition to the Labour Party, and of course, they are feeling better. I would just make the point that after Lawson's budgets back in the Thatcher era, the Labour Party was convinced it was going to win a general election then too.
Yeah, a couple of points I want to get you on. Let's start with the economy one, because we've just been talking about that. And this go for growth stuff and this cutting back of, I suppose you could say, red tape and tax cuts for the top earners, if you want to call it that. Is there something here that potentially more Tories should be more confident of saying, which is, why do you need the state to control your life? Why don't you get off your backside, maybe work a little bit harder, maybe get yourself into that top bracket if you can, and back yourself?
Yeah, we should encourage people to support these things and to be confident about saying, I want to keep more of my money to decide how it's spent for myself. After all, this will incentivize people to work and earn and to keep more of their own money. We put prices up on things like cigarettes and alcohol because we want to discourage their consumption. What do you think taking a price down does? It encourages you to do more of that which you're buying or receiving. And cutting taxes encourages people to work harder because they know they're going to keep more of their money. The other thing that it does significantly is seek to attract people from outside the United Kingdom to here, particularly people who are going to earn a great deal of money, who will get to keep that money. And I'm all in favour of that, as long as they pay the tax on what they owe. People who come here and the indirect and transformative economic benefits of their being here can really jet fuel our economy. The city needs more of this activity. Our city is number one centre in Europe for finance, number two in the world behind New York, but it could definitely be better. It's being threatened by Paris, it's being threatened by Amsterdam. We have to show that we are more competitive than our peers in Europe, and there are great ways to do that by removing the banker's bonus cap, a policy that nobody fiscally or economically thought was a good idea. It was gesture politics. Removing that bonus cap and lowering the top rate, or indeed abolishing the 45p rate, which Gordon Brown introduced in a fit of spite right at the end of his era. The tax regime we've got now is the one that Blair and Brown had for almost their entire period in office. We're going to demonstrate that Britain's more competitive, and low taxes help to do that.
Yeah, indeed. And Alex, the one thing as well that I suspect is on the rise, and the Labour Party may well have to confront going forward, is that I think there's a huge amount of people within the Labour Party's ranks who, if they're being honest with themselves, just don't like rich people. But we haven't got time to get stuck into that. Alex Dean, thank you very much, Conservative commentator, bringing you all the way up to date with the latest political goings-on as I sit here at Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Coming up, though, it's understood that there will be no investiture ceremony for the new Prince of Wales. What does all of this really mean? Well, basically, we'll be spending a load of taxpayers' money to welcome William into Wales. We'll have more details with Cameron Walker next. And on top of that as well, are any of our government's border policies actually working? A big fat no is the answer. Back at our studio in Paddington, there's a little place called Little Venice just round the corner. Well, I wonder how much of Britain's going to be called Little Albania too, because if you turn up from Albania, despite the fact that we've actually got a scheme with them, a rapid return scheme, it does look as though all you have to do is set foot on British soil, say that you want to claim asylum, and we can't send you anywhere, people. What on earth is going on the same day that Keir Starmer has just said that he's going to have controlled immigration and a points-based immigration system? What on earth is going on in this world? Hey, it's all gone topsy-turvy, hasn't it? GBNews at gbnews.uk. Get in touch with me. Don't be shy. I'll be back in a sec.
We are GB News. And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio,
And online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Yes, OK. Well, we're all rather used to seeing a prince turn himself into a symbol, but a new royal cipher has just dropped. Earlier this afternoon, I spoke to GB News' royal reporter, Cameron Walker, about, though, how there are no plans for an investiture ceremony for the new Prince of Wales. We also spoke about the Prince and Princess's visit to Wales. Here's what our reporter, Cameron Walker, told me a little earlier.
We've seen pictures back in 1969 of that famous, almost coronation-like investiture of the then Prince Charles as the Prince of Wales, done by Her Majesty the Queen when he was put a coronet on his head, which looks a bit like a crown, essentially. None of that is, at the moment, going to be happening because Kensington Palace, it was understood that there are no plans for an investiture ceremony. As you mentioned, Patrick, Mark Drakeford said a copy of this famous investiture ceremony with Charles, as you're seeing on your screen now, would be inappropriate, particularly perhaps with the cost of living crisis, and I suspect that officials at Kensington Palace and Prince William himself are very much aware of that and how that would go down with the public, especially if their taxpayers' money is involved with that. But the Prince and Princess of Wales have a true kind of love for Wales, and they are in the country today. They've been in Anglesey a little bit earlier on this afternoon, visiting an RNLI lifeboat station. You can see them greeting crowds there on your screens. They were visiting local businesses and meeting local people as well. It's the first place they spent time as newlyweds. They had their first marital home there. Their oldest son, Prince George, spent the first years of his life in Anglesey, where these pictures are being taken. And they also chose to take Prince George and Princess Charlotte to Wales to visit during Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations back in June. So a special time for them. They've also been in Swansea in the last hour or so visiting a church which has many different functions. It's got a food bank, it's got a Swansea Baby Basics, which distributes kind of essential items for vulnerable families. We know that the Princess of Wales is very keen on early childhood development. This little boy you're seeing on your screen now is 4-year-old Theo Crompton. He's wearing his school tie and uniform, and he was rewarded with the chance to present a bouquet of pink roses to Kate. And his mum said, "We were actually on our way to school when I changed my mind and decided to bring him down here for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I suspect, Patrick, that this little boy, this is something that he's not going to forget in a hurry, meeting the new Prince and Princess of Wales.
Don't worry, for the final half hour of this show, we have got things that may be a little bit more riveting than Kate looking at a child who should have been at school. We'll be hearing why the government's rapid returns deal with Albania to deport channel migrants is in jeopardy. But first, it's your latest news headlines.
Patrick, thank you. The headlines. The Labour leader has promised he'll create a publicly owned green energy company within a year if he's elected. Sir Keir Starmer said his plans for the Great British Energy Company would provide British power to the British people. His keynote speech at his party's conference came after days of financial market uncertainty in the wake of the Chancellor's mini-budget. Speaking in Liverpool, Sir Keir Starmer also took aim at the government and said, "Don't forget, don't forgive."
The government has lost control of the British economy. And for what? They've crashed the pound. And for what? My government will be different. We will run towards the challenges of tomorrow. We will get us out of this endless cycle of crisis. And we will do it with a fresh start, a new set of priorities, and a new way of governing.
Well, the Chancellor has told city investors he's confident in the government's long-term plan for growth after the pound hit an all-time low against the dollar. Kwasi Kwarteng reiterated the government's commitment to fiscal sustainability in a meeting with pension fund holders, insurers and asset managers. Next month, he's going to set out a package of regulatory reforms for the UK's financial services sector to incentivise investment. The Labour MP Rupa Huq has offered the Chancellor her sincere and heartfelt apologies for comments she made describing him as superficially black. Ms Huq has been suspended from the Labour Party following the recorded comments she made about Kwasi Kwarteng at a Labour conference fringe event yesterday. Next year's Eurovision Song Contest will be held either in Glasgow or in Liverpool. The BBC said the two remaining cities, which both have riverside area venues, had the strongest overall offer. The broadcaster says a final decision will be made within weeks. You are up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel. Don't go anywhere. Patrick's back in just a bit. Quick look at the markets for today. The pound buying you $1.077, €1.119, and the price of gold currently standing at £1,518.48 an ounce.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Well, welcome back. We are the People's Channel. We're going to be talking about the channel because Whitehall lawyers have said that the government's rapid returns deal with Albania, shock horror, was going to deport channel migrants. Well, it will not apply, actually, will it, to those actually seeking asylum? What does this really mean? Because refugee charity Care for Calais requested disclosure for the deal, and the government's legal department responded by saying asylum seekers will not be subject to the arrangements. The charity is framing this as a U-turn, and the Home Office has essentially disputed all of this. It comes after the Rwanda migrant policy has faced delays and quite literally has not got off the ground. These policy problems pose the question, could they actually ever be a success? Not just a success, will they actually work, frankly, or are they wrong in principle? Are they doomed to fail? Let's have a big debate on this right now. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Get your views coming in. Research fellow at the Bow Group, Benjamin Loughnane, joins me, and immigration lawyer at Privatus, Yvonne Sampson. Thank you so much. Benjamin, I'm going to ask you firstly, from where I'm sitting, it currently looks as though if I was in Albania, having a nice life with my wife and kids, and I decided to drive across mainland Europe, get on a small boat in Calais and land somewhere around the Kent area, I could kiss the sand and say I'm an asylum seeker, and Bob's your uncle, I get to stay in Britain. Is that as pathetic as it sounds?
Yeah, it's absolutely farcical. We've been told for the past few years, almost patronised actually, that these people are fleeing war and terror. It turns out that 6 in 10 of them are just fleeing Albania, which, by the way, is currently in the process of joining the EU. So it can't be the absolute worst hellhole in the world that we've been told it is for the past couple of years, when we've been told that we have to accept these people in because they're fleeing the worst abject circumstances possible. It really does spit in the face, I think, of the British people that we now find out that these people are coming from a country which hasn't been at war in the past 25 years and is actually a developing country.
OK, now, with your legal hat on, immigration lawyer at Privatus, Ivan Sampson, can you just confirm to me something I think I know, which is that our government, despite saying they wanted to sort out what was going on in the Channel, knowingly signed a legal agreement with a country that actually, frankly, changed nothing, as long as someone said they were an asylum seeker?
Well, it has changed something, because if you don't claim asylum, that agreement stands and Albania will accept them. It's not Albania who's refusing to accept them. We have an obligation under the Refugee Convention to consider all of asylum applicants. And that starts off with what's called an asylum screening interview, then a substantive interview, and the decision is made, and then their appeal rights right the way to the Supreme Court and further afield with the European Convention on Human Rights. What the government should be doing is fast-tracking the asylum application, because at the moment it's taking about 12 months before they even interview somebody for asylum, this substantive interview. So that's the reason that there's delays. That's the reason there's a backlog. Now, if a person is a bogus asylum seeker, that decision should be made quickly. They should be interviewed quickly and a decision delivered to them. Then there's the added problem of what do you do if they haven't got any identity documents? And again, we need to work with the Albanians using technology, using fingerprints and face recognition to get the Albanians to identify people once they've been refused asylum and remove them to Albania. That whole process can be done in a matter of a few weeks. Unfortunately, it takes about 12 months or 18 months to get a decision.
Yeah, OK, all right, I'll return to you. Benjamin Loughnane from the Bow Group, I'll throw it back to you. Do you feel like giving up when it comes to wanting strong borders? Because it appears that absolutely nobody in any political party at the minute has any intention of sorting out what's going on in the Channel at all.
Well, we shouldn't give up, but I don't have much hope that we're actually going to achieve it, because this government certainly hasn't expressed any desire to crack down on this. Liz Truss actually came out the other day and said that we need more immigration, not less. So clearly she doesn't have the perspective on this that most of the country does. I don't think she really cares. But going back to what he said earlier, Ivan earlier was saying about the Convention on Refugees. Well, that actually says that refugees or asylum seekers should claim asylum in the first safe country they reach. Now, in most cases, if you're fleeing war and terror, that's not going to be Britain, that's going to be because you're crossing through so many countries to get here in the first place. But in the case of Albania, the first safe country is Albania, because they're not at war. It's not an unsafe country. There's nothing to flee from in Albania. So this idea that somehow people can go through so many safe countries to get to Britain, and still, because of the Convention on Refugees, we have in some way got to grant them asylum, is absolutely farcical. There's no reason why they need to reach Britain. They could stop at any country on the way there.
Benjamin's hit a really interesting point there. Ivan, as an immigration lawyer, what am I able to claim asylum from if I'm Albanian?
Well, a lot of the Albanian claims that I've seen is to do with blood feuds. So what they're saying is their life is in danger because another family member is threatening their life, and the government is not protecting them because they're corrupt. And that's most of the Albanian claims. But I'll just take issue with what the other guest said about that asylum seekers have to claim asylum in the first country they've come across. It won't stop an asylum seeker claiming asylum in the UK, even if they've been around Europe twice. We still have to consider the claim, even if they haven't done that. Now, before Brexit, we could return people to France, coming from France, under the Dublin Convention. Since leaving the EU, we can't do that, since we're no longer a party to that convention. Before we left the EU, there should have been an agreement replicating Dublin. Nobody was doing the thinking. The government was so eager to get out the EU They didn't really think about what would happen to people we want to return who've claimed asylum in France. So we need a proper strategy.
Okay, Ivan. Yeah, Ivan, I'm just going to stop you there because, Benjamin, I think Ivan hit on a really interesting point, which is that if a lot of Albanian people are claiming they've got blood feuds with other Albanians in Albania and the government is too corrupt to sort it out, and then a load of Albanians come here, presumably those blood feuds will still exist on the streets of Britain, we end up with another Leicester-style scenario where we had elements of a Hindu sect, elements of a Pakistani sect going at it, another Iranian embassy scenario. Are we just importing foreign problems?
You've struck exactly on what I was going to say. This is the worst possible thing we can do, is importing these blood feuds into the UK. When the Albanians flee these blood feuds from Albania, they tend to bring them with them. And we have seen this in the case of Leicester, and we have seen it elsewhere. It's a terrible idea to import problems from elsewhere into the UK, because when they're coming to a safe place, it doesn't stay safe for very long. And then all of a sudden, they've just spread the problem over here. And it's a terrible idea for us to have a system where we can't even get rid of the people who break the law by coming into the country in the first place and then bring crime and terror and all other sorts of things along with them. I think it's absolutely outrageous, and the government really need to get a handle on this as soon as possible.
Ivan, I'll give the final word to you, immigration lawyer at Privateers, Ivan Sampson. How long is it going to be before people in Britain are claiming asylum from our asylum system?
Well, believe it or not, people claim asylum in the US as well, even what's called whitelist countries. Look, it doesn't mean that the blood feuds are genuine. You're making an assumption that these claims are genuine. In my experience, they're not, the vast majority of them. But what we need to do is the Home Office need to get a grip of this processing system. We need to have a proper system which complies with our duty under the convention, gives everyone a fair chance, but does it in a quick and efficient way. That's the problem. And as I said, if we were to overhaul the Home Office, we could actually assess applications within a few weeks and not years, which is what's happening at the moment.
Both of you, thank you very much. Really, really enjoyed that. Great to have you both on the show. Bow Groups, Benjamin Loughnane and immigration lawyer at Privateers, Ivan Sampson. Right, we're moving on, people, because in a statement the Home Office said, well, not quite moving on, actually, since signing our returns agreement with Albania in 2021, we've removed more than 1,000 Albanians, including some who crossed the channel illegally, to come to the UK. Those who seek to abuse our system should be in no doubt of our determination to remove them. Right, OK, thank you very much, Home Office. Now, moving on. Transgender children's charity Mermaids has come under fire as an investigation by The Telegraph found that the charity had given out, get this now, chest-flattening devices to young girls against their parents' wishes. Yesterday, we had on a story about how a child as young as 6 was going to be labelled transphobic by a school, and their parents were, for not recognising or not wanting to recognise that another 6-year-old child was actually now a girl instead of a boy. This madness is continuing. Medical experts have highlighted the dangers of chest binding, saying that it can cause problems, including breastfeeding difficulties and broken ribs. Some people might even argue that it's relatively barbaric. The charity aims to support transgender children and their families, but campaigners have called for regulators to step in and launch an investigation into safeguarding. One of the biggest issues for me here is the lack of parental consent. Dr. Heather Bluskell-Evans is an academic and author with a research interest in the area of transgender body politics, and she joins me now. Thank you very, very much. Firstly, should these charities be allowed to do this kind of thing without parental consent?
Well, of course, they shouldn't, and it's astonishing that this charity has been allowed to exist for as long as it has, and actually has the respect that it has from all kinds of organisations who actually employ them to do training on issues of alleged children who are born in the wrong body or transgender children. So it is a very serious issue, and I'm absolutely delighted that this is coming out into the public domain, that Mermaids has no medical training, no psychological training for that matter. It is a lobby group which has set itself up as a charity, and in fact, just like Stonewall, makes quite a lot of money out of providing workshops and training.
Well,
and
I was about to
advice.
say, I was about to say, and this is almost like pro-trans merch, isn't it? You can get these chest binders, which we're being told that it can cause breastfeeding difficulties in the future, broken ribs. My concern with this is this a way of getting round almost full medical transition? It's like a soft transition, isn't it? You're changing your body without going under the surgeon's knife.
It's true, and can I just point out that actually chest binder is a euphemism. It's actually for binding teenage girls' breasts. It's a breast binder. And girls have been doing this for a number of years now, binding their breasts in order to appear to be male, to have a flat chest. Mermaids has been advising this for years. The girls go onto social media and they read all about it and almost demand breast binders because it's the cult of transgenderism now, which young teenagers are exposed to. So yes, they're highly dangerous. Of course, they restrict breathing, so they will restrict young girls in doing sporting activities and so on. And it's very dangerous to compress the breast tissue as it's growing. But yes, parents who don't go along with this, Mermaids, I think, regards those parents as being transphobic and advises children to go behind their parents' backs to get the breast binders.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and this is one thing that I find staggering. Firstly, there are some noises online, which you are an academic who's right across this, so you will know more than me, and I want to just put some of these things to you. Some people say that sometimes this kind of stuff is deep-rooted in almost some kind of perversion, wanting children to change their bodies. Some people would also say, if you look at an even bigger picture, that what's going on is the idea they want to create some kind of androgynous society that in a weird way makes us easier to control. Is either of those two things true?
Well, I think there are truths involved in both of the statements that you made, but in a way, for today, I think that's a bit of a distraction. I think we can easily criticise mermaids and their practices by sticking with Mermaids itself as an organisation. The danger of going beyond Mermaids is that you can branch into a sort of conspiracy theory terrain, and it's important actually not to do that because it is actually factually true that Mermaids is advising malpractice towards children, and there is much empirical evidence to demonstrate that without straying into any of these other areas. So they can be discussed at another time.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Just very, very quickly, because I've got to read a reply, rightly so, from Mermaids themselves. You just think this practice is wrong, fundamentally wrong. Well, just tell me exactly why, quickly.
I think it's fundamentally wrong because it's part of a whole sort of ideological position that children can be born in the wrong body, which is clearly not true. That children can be assigned at birth and can be truly the opposite sex inside, which is not true. And binding breasts, although it isn't a surgical practice, will almost inevitably lead to a young girl wanting to seek medical treatment. And in fact, young teenagers now get double mastectomies.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are now children mutilating themselves in a way that they will come to regret drastically in later life, and one could draw an inference that some of it comes from some of this ideology. Dr. Heather Blunksall Evans there, thank you very much, academic and author.
Thank you.
In response to the Daily Telegraph's findings about Mermaids, which is the group of people who've been selling this stuff to kids, the Mermaids themselves said, Some trans, masculine, non-binary and gender diverse people experience bodily dysphoria as a result of their chest, and binding for some helps alleviate that distress. Mermaid takes a harm reduction position with the understanding that providing a young person with a binder is preferable to the likely alternative of unsafe practices and or continued or increasing dysphoria. Good grief, there you go. They were playing kind of word bingo with trans stuff there, weren't they? But I suppose that's their right. Up next is Jubes & Co. with, you guessed it, Bev Turner, who's in for Michelle Dewberry. Bev, thank you so much. She joins me now from that studio all the way over there in Paddington. What have you got coming up, Bev?
Good evening, Patrick. We've got a great show coming up tonight. We're going to be looking at Keir Starmer's speech with Joe Phillips and Claire Fox. What did he get right? Who did it appeal to? What more would you like to have heard him say? We're going to talk about this idea for a domestic violence register. Is that going to protect women, or does it mean that men will never be able to escape their past? And we're going to be asking, should you be allowed to have time off work for a broken heart? I think probably not, but we've got all of that to come at 6 o'clock with Joe Phillips and Claire Fox. Like I say, two fantastic matriarchs of the political world, and I cannot wait to get stuck into those debates. And can I just say, Patrick Christy, two of my favourite moments from today at the conference was when you said that Keir Starmer is so wooden he's been known to have birds nesting in him. And the fact that you were left speechless when Andrew Pearce said his wife is quite fit, they should roll her out more often.
Yes, indeed, actually. Although, to be fair, it did make me take a second look at Keir Starmer's wife. So there we go. That was something interesting to come out of today, at least. Thank you very much, Bev. Bev Turner there. Don't want to miss that, of course. It's going to be absolutely box office stuff, as it always is. Thank you very much, everybody who's been tuning in to me live here in Liverpool for the Labour Party conference. I'm going to be back in the studio tomorrow, 3 p.m. until 6 p.m. Then we've got Friday Night Feast, Thursday, whatever day it is. I've lost count because, frankly, it's just been absolute carnage here, but I've loved every minute of it, and I'm whizzing down to Birmingham as well for the Conservative Party conference. It's all go, but I will leave you in peace with Jubes & Co. with Bev Turner. But before that, here's your weather. Yes, OK, I can save you a lot of time. Just tell you that it's raining and windy everywhere. Take it easy.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A bright and breezy day for many of us. Further scattered showers to come, especially around eastern and western coasts. But in between the showers, there will be some sunshine. The more prolonged rain that we saw yesterday in the southwest, now pushing away. These weather fronts responsible for that. And low pressure still close by. I suppose a bit more spaced out, so the wind not quite as brisk, but it is still fairly breezy out there, especially in the north and down the east coast. That breeze bringing further showers to northern Scotland into southeast Scotland, as well as parts of eastern England. Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest seeing showers as well. One or two popping up further away as well, but away from the showers, some sunny spells, and out of the wind, a little bit warmer compared with yesterday. 15, 16, perhaps 17 Celsius in some favoured spots. Into the evening, some more prolonged rain topples in from the North Sea quite quickly across eastern Scotland and then into northern England, the Midlands, as well as eventually southern parts of England and South Wales. It turns more showery as it moves south, but there will be some heavy bursts associated with that. Away from there, further showers to come into the north, but clear spells in between. And temperatures not falling quite as far. We're looking at mid to high single figures generally. So a fairly bright start to Thursday. Some sunshine in places once the showery rain has moved away from the south. But further showers arrive, especially for northern England and eastern Scotland. Those showers coming in on a northeasterly breeze. And away from the showers, there will be some sunshine, but of course that northeasterly is going to make it feel cool across parts of eastern Scotland and northeast England. In the south, I think 16 or 17 Celsius out of the wind, feeling pleasant enough. However, on Friday, some heavy rain arrives from the west. That will be prolonged in the west during the morning, pushing into the east by the afternoon, accompanied by strong winds, bright spells and showers on Saturday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The